I went ahead and started the recording, and we can go ahead and get underway and do introductions and such. I also have a kind of preamble. So, welcome to the June 5th, 2025 meeting of Seattle Design Commission this afternoon from 1 to 4. We will be having our third and final meeting, which I have some comments on in just a minute, but our review of State Route 520, specifically the Portage Bay Bridge and Roanoke Lid segment. We'll monitor. I was talking with Todd a little earlier. I do see one member of the public that is attending virtually. We'll make sure that we carve out time for public comment as well throughout this afternoon. Why don't we go ahead and start with introductions with Shireen, and if anyone has any disclosures as well, that would be great.
Good afternoon, I'm Shireen Masudita, at-large commissioner.
I'm Brian Markham, Engineering Commissioner, and I'm the sub.
Phoebe Goger.
Ray Gastel, planning. Sure.
Molly Spatalbeg, Urban Design Commissioner, often on the subcommittee. Kate Clark, Art Commissioner.
Kevin O'Neill, Transportation Planning Commissioner.
Hi, I'm Graham Boba with WashDOT Landscape Architect.
Todd Harrison with WashDOT 520 program.
Matt Rad with WashDOT 520 program.
Brendan Kempf, landscape architect with AECOM and the design build team for this project.
And I'm Fran Terry with Tuber Group, also with the design and build team.
And I see we have Jim Simkin, a member of the public, attending as well. Todd or any of the team. Is anyone from your team presenting virtually today?
No, it is all Brendan and his team.
Bradley is.
Yeah, we will have Bradley Touchstone.
Oh, okay,
Our
yeah.
bridge architect will be attending remotely, as well as Robin Clark is also with the design build team.
And I see Bradley and Robin joined us, as well as Brianna.
And Brianna's, we have some of our WashDOT folks too, little join just to listen.
Before we kick off with your presentation, I was talking to Todd and a couple of the commissioners earlier. I told in advance of today, I was trying to look at the history of this relationship and collaborative effort between Seattle Design Commission, the city, and trying to advance the project. I found notes from March of 2002 when we looked at the Trans Lake 520 expansion, and I'm happy to provide you with these.
Is that what you're getting out of high school, Matt?
Many of the comments still are similar comments of all the things that we've been capturing together. And we started this project in earnest, this phase of the project in 2019, and I won't labor on too long, but it really has been unprecedented in a relationship where urban design and a state transportation department have made this significant commitment to advance a system of a fundamental transportation system for the city and for the region. And it just really is something that has been a pleasure to watch. And I think to the extent I can speak for the city, a pleasure to say on behalf of the city, thank you for all of the work, all of the commitment, the effort, and the partnership, really. So thank you.
It's helpful to have an advocate.
And it helps with, it's a big program, as you know, and a lot of public and other agency involvement. So it helps to have those strong relationships that get to the finish line.
And reinforce why we've made decisions that are in the best interest of the project and the community we're touching.
Absolutely. And I'll leave it there and throw it to.
All right, go ahead and get my screen sharing here. All right. Well, thank you all for the opportunity to be here today, to share with you, the, Portage Bay Bridge Project, SR 520 and Roanoke Lid. Excited to be here, excited to share all the work, that we've been working on. One minor point of correction, this is not the final time you get to see us. It is the
I
final
take
time.
my comments.
Yes, we will be back. There will be more. But still, very excited to be here, excited to share all this with you.
I mean,
It's the fun.
what you mean by that is it's the final time that can really meaningfully shape.
Yeah, that part is true. And there's a slide coming up, so we'll put a finer point on that in just a moment.
I'm already, the expansion, I'm already expanding it in my mind.
The client correcting the.
We're all one team, right?
Go see this in real time.
So, today's agenda, we're gonna start similar to, for those of you who were with us last time, we're gonna start on the east end and work our way west. So we'll start with a dive into the Montlake connection area, the extension of the Montlake phase, Montlake Lid. Our last presentation focused heavily on Portage Bay Bridge and some of the ancillary bridges, so that's not today's focus. So we'll move across Portage Bay, we'll look at the Boyer Traverse, Roanoke Stair area. We'll work our way around the open space, the local streetscape areas, and then culminate at the Roanoke open space with a deeper dive into the various spaces and opportunities we have there. Project overview. We've all seen this slide a couple of times now, but just want to highlight just the scale and the expanse of the project, picking up from where the Montlake phase left off, carrying the kind of the culmination of the 520 program across over Portage Bay into the I-5 interchange, and with our Roanoke open space, the lid that's going to reconnect North Capitol Hill and Roanoke district neighborhoods. Zooming in a little bit closer, the slide's highlighting a number of the key areas, all around on the west side here at the interchange and the Roanoke lid. Central, of course, is this great lawn at the center point of the lid, the open space itself. Really a connection from Interlochen Boulevard, the kind of green belt there, to Roanoke Park on the north side. So really an extension of these legacy Olmsted Brothers parks. Tremendous opportunity here, very exciting for all of us to be working on, and just re-knitting this community, having this really great central point here at the lid. Continuing across the bay to the east, we have Portage Bay Bridge, both north and south bridges. We'll have the SR 520 trail will be a part of the south bridge, connecting all the way, to points eastward into Redmond and beyond, part of a really large trail network. And then lastly, kind of the eastern portion, you can see faded out ever so slightly, the Montlake Lid area, the Montlake phase, and the connection in between. So really how Portage Bay Bridge is touching down on the east side of Portage Bay, and those connections to the local bike trails, as well as that regional SR 520 trail. I kind of already highlighted this, the three major elements of the west end, the Montlake Lid, the bridge itself, and then finally the Roanoke Lid and that interchange area. Also note, we do have an additional bridge, the I-5 Roanoke Trail Crossing Bridge, which is the focal point of our very first presentation with you all. Also one that we'll be discussing in our kind of next touch points, but not the focus of today's presentation. A couple more slides here that are just helping to set the stage and highlight that regional trail network and the importance of what this project is bringing. So of course, the SR 520 trail going all the way across Lake Washington over to the east side, extending through Bellevue, Redmond. And this is that last piece really that's going to pick up from where the Montlake phase left off, get that network, that trail across Portage Bay and into all of these opportunities beyond. Whether it's Roanoke District, North Capitol Hill, even downtown, East Lake. By the time we get this image is kind of very representative of the kind of the initial design concept of, as you arrive at this point, this delta, this distribution, all of these different trail opportunities that are going to emanate from this project. So where are we today? You noted earlier the main thrust of the project really picking up in 2019 with the conceptual design, RFP development, procurement. Today we're in the midst of the design build effort. And so, obviously continuing to have these touch points with the design commission, getting input and feedback along the way. And just to quickly step back, in terms of the delivery of the project, we have a series of packages encapsulating different portions of the project. We have three packages addressing the landscape architecture and urban design. That first initial package for the I-5 Roanoke Trail Crossing Bridge, then a west package and east package. Today, we're really kind of culminating on those two packages. We also have wayfinding, which is going to feature heavily today as well. Bridge architecture, that was the focus of our last meeting, and then fire safety and building, we will touch on briefly today as well. On the bottom there, you see kind of the progression of the design submittal process. We are at this culmination point of the preliminary design phase. So we are on the cusp of going into the next stage of WashDOT and City of Seattle design review, and then progressing into the final design stage. And this is what I meant. This is that kind of finer point on this is not the last time you'll see us. This is the last time you will see us in the preliminary design phase. So this is really this presentation is the culmination of all of that. We will be coming back for an additional subcommittee workshop, as well as a full commission presentation, just like we're doing today, during our final design phase.
Right.
So as we get various stakeholder and agency feedback after our preliminary design, we'll work on incorporating all of that. And as that materializes and further design progress and refinements, we'll be bringing that back to you all for an additional update. As I mentioned today, our focus is really going to be project-wide on the landscape and the urban design, touching on some of the materiality and finishes, planting approach, certainly focusing on portals and gateways, and really the overall experience and how the wayfinding also ties in with all of that. Also want to touch on the fact that this is not the only opportunity for kind of public engagement and interaction and getting feedback on this project. There are quarterly Section 106 consulting parties meetings that have been ongoing for quite some time. The dates that you see here are kind of the most recent ones that have had the design build team involved. The next one is actually coming up next week on the 10th. So I want to highlight that. And those meetings will continue through the duration of the project as well. Skanska, the builder for the project, is also hosting a series of annual open houses. There's another one of those coming up this summer. And just generally, these design packages, they will be passed along to representatives of that Section 106 group. And there will be opportunities for stakeholder review and comment during that preliminary and final design stages. So jumping back into a little bit of the overall connectivity, don't want to belabor this too much because we have seen this before, but again, highlighting the multitude of connections out into the community from this project, really centered on both that Montlake connection area and even more importantly the Roanoke Lid area, the terminus of the SR 520 trail, and all of those opportunities out into the community, the neighborhoods for connection. This is looking a little bit more closely. You can see the more recent SR 520 trail segment dashed in orange, connecting through underneath the Montlake Boulevard with the tunnel there, continuing on to what we call the kind of Bill Dawson Trail and the Bill Dawson Underbridge area that we'll see in just a moment. And then on the west side, all of these connections, the dashed areas being existing or planned neighborhood greenways that are going to be implemented, future bike trails, and bike lanes associated with city streets, and these connections into the Roanoke District, North Capitol Hill, East Lake, and downtown beyond. In terms of kind of general appearance, materiality, and finishes, this project in many ways is an extension of the Montlake phase. So we're carrying through some of those key design elements. The Montlake ledge pattern, the inverse of that Montlake ledge pattern that feature heavily on the roadway walls, the roadside walls. And then for the more pedestrian scaled walls, incorporating this adds pattern, which we'll talk about a little bit later as well. But a kind of a finer pattern, more pedestrian scaled for a lot of the spaces that people will be walking by, cyclists will be passing by as well. In terms of railings and lighting, the palette from that Montlake phase getting expanded slightly. We have introduced this transitional fixture, part of the CL standard catalog of light fixtures that will feature on the west side of Portage Bay. The marina fixture being a consistent extension of the light fixtures that have been used throughout the Montlake phase. So over on the east side of Portage Bay, we'll have that continuity. And then as we transition into the west side, the transitional fixtures, you'll see those in many of the kind of the views of the study model as we go through this presentation. What was driving the kind of the move towards this transitional fixture was the fact that it has a larger throw for light. So we need fewer of them, and there's much less visual clutter throughout the open space and other areas. Also point out briefly that we do have for the bridge columns on the piers 2 and 3, so that's going to be on the west side of Portage Bay. We also have uplights that are going to help illuminate and accentuate those columns. In terms of site furnishings, again, expanding, continuing the many of the City of Seattle standard kitted parts, introducing the World's Fair bench as a nod to the Olmsted legacy. So originally designed as part of the 1939 World's Fair. So that be a key element that harkens back. We'll also have a grill, drinking fountain, the typical City of Seattle refuse collection receptacles, as well as removable bollards at key points, as well as bike racks.
And then this is the overall sign family that's used throughout the project. Some of it is not on the Montlake side, but we'll get into that a little bit in a minute. And then just you'll see some of this throughout study models as Brendan's going through, but we also have highlighted specific signs in a minute. We've also tried to put bike signage on existing light poles where we can, so that we're again eliminating poles and visual clutter throughout the project and working with SCL on where those are going. So just keep that in mind as we go along.
So real quick, our roadmap, I described this before, we'll be starting going from east to west with that Montlake connection area, quickly going over Portage Bay, the west side, the underbridge areas, streetscapes, and the connections into the Roanoke open space, and then lastly, the Roanoke open space itself. With that, we'll get started on the Montlake connection. So some of these, as we go through, we'll be harkening back to the original design concept and then highlighting how some of the design has progressed and some of the refinements. So starting out here, this is the Canal Reserve area, part of the Montlake connection. This is adjacent to the Montlake tunnels dumping out right here onto the SR 520 trail that transitions into the Bill Dawson Trail, a stair and sidewalk switchback connection that leads up to Montlake Boulevard itself. And you can see a couple of the sections through this space that illustrate some of the grade change and things that we're going to happen there. I would say largely, the design for this area has remained the same. The primary refinement and change there is if you look at the baseline RFP concept up here in the upper left, you'll see that there was envisioned a landscape wall, a retaining wall here. If you can see where the cursor is traced now, that was going to be abutting the NOAA property directly to the north. And there's an opportunity here to actually shift that wall as an extension of the retaining wall that would be necessary to support that switchback path and have that fully integrated. So we don't have an additional secondary wall. We don't have additional construction disturbances and impacts to that fencing, to that NOAA facility, and just reinforces the intended movement path for pedestrians and cyclists that are going to be accessing the Bill Dawson Trail here from above on Long Lake Boulevard.
Brendan, question.
Yes.
Are you keeping the NOAA fence or is that your new fence at property line?
We are keeping the existing NOAA fence all along that edge, so it doesn't have to be disturbed. If it had been, we would have been replacing it and addressing its interface with the retaining wall, but we're able to sidestep that matter. And so it also, by shifting that wall up against the Montlake Connection sidewalk, that gives us an opportunity to use grading to kind of tie into that existing condition, rather than some of the other challenges that wall would have introduced. So here, a quick view, as if you're basically emerging from that Montlake tunnel, looking out into the space. You can see Portage Bay Bridge, actually just beyond here on the left side. You can see that switchback path that leads up through the lawn space and ultimately ties up to Montlake Boulevard and the very bottom of that Montlake stair coming down as well. So largely kind of an open space, planting and kind of shrub tree massings pushed for the most part out to the edges so that this remains a very open space as people are moving through it. As you continue down the path, so here you can see, I'll jump back for a moment. As we continue down along Bill Dawson Trail here, it's going to wind its way underneath Portage Bay Bridge. And this is what it looks like today. So it's not the most inviting of places. It's been overgrown over time. You can see the NOAA facility is pretty much right on top of it. There's an area underneath the bridge today that is used by NOAA for some additional parking area. And just generally some kind of low head height clearance going underneath that bridge. So those are some of the challenges in this existing condition that our project is looking to improve upon. So that underbridge area in many ways is going to be defined by the bridge itself. And you can see this kind of the curving pathway that leads through here. One of the key design elements through this space is this pair of architectural fascia walls that will come and sit directly in front of the bridge abutments. So they will, rather than kind of show highlighting or exposing the abutment wall itself, which is a very utilitarian structure, it is linear for a very specific purpose. Kind of breaking that up with these curving walls that will help to conceal that. And have a better relationship to the form of these paths and that experience as you're moving through and under this bridge area. So we'll start on the north side. This is the area underneath the mainline bridge. So both Portage Bay Bridge North and South, as they're touching down at the abutment wall that you see here on behind this fascia wall. So all of our projects all the walls across the project are numbered. So forgive me if I throw out a wall number, I will try to clarify all of those. But this particular wall is 90L. So you can see that it's got this arcing, curving profile. It's also, that face is also battered. So similar to some of the roadside walls, it has its 10-to-1 batter. And then underneath the bridge area, we have essentially a rockscape area that's going to incorporate cobblestones and boulders. To break up some of that space and also to provide texture to that ground plane. And then one of the key elements here, of course, being the reflective panels as well that we'll see a little more detail on in just a moment. But having those panels also helping to animate the space and having a dialogue with all the girders that are spanning above. You'll also note the fencing for the NOAA facility. This is new fencing, right? So we saw in the images earlier that was primarily an unappealing chain link fence that wraps around. So we'll be picking up on the design language of the kind of wrought iron picket type of fencing along the majority of the NOAA property and carrying that on through to help secure that parking area. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment as well. Going back to these reflective panels, so it's a series of these stainless steel panels that will be mounted to that wall. There will be lighting in the girder bays that provide downlighting directly over the path, but there will also be girder wash lights that are pointing back towards the this fascia wall and helping to reflect light back and off these reflective panels so that there's more light just being displayed and bounced around in this space. So it's not like there's a dark area off of the trail. We're trying to make sure that there's a good, consistent light level all the way through, so that this doesn't have that same kind of underlit or dark quality through it. It should be very well lit. And as well as people are moving past these reflective panels, you'll see that subtle, and it's not a mirror finish. So it's not going to be you're not going to be able to, comb your hair in front of these things, for instance, but you'll see the color and movement will still reflect off of these and help to animate that space. Of course, we're getting into all the details of exactly how these things come together, being mindful of serviceability for these things, how they'll be installed, how they'll be able to be maintained in the future. The stainless steel elements, there's also a component of bird netting as part of this as well that helps to keep birds from being a nuisance in that open space behind this facial wall and the abutment wall itself. That open space being critical to the bridge preservation aspect of the project, so that there's access into that space through a man door, so that washout personnel are able to inspect the bridge and the abutment as needed. Couple views here, looking at that space. So again, pulled from our study model that we've been using to explore all of these areas. So on the top, we're basically standing inside the NOAA facility, looking to the south, looking underneath the bridge there, and you can see the fencing as it goes through. And then on the lower image, kind of looking directly opposite, looking from the sloped walkway that'll lead up to a bridge that connects ultimately up to Portage Bay Bridge itself. So you can kind of see into this space from both directions, as well as kind of more photorealistic kind of rendering highlighting the space. Now, I know this was a topic at our last presentation in terms of the scaling of all of this and how that's represented. And that's one of the things that we've been very focused on truing up since our last touch point with you all, and kind of moving ahead into a series of kind of more detailed sections through this space. I think this will help to highlight really what the scale and the dimensions are through this area. So starting here directly under the mainline bridge, we've got about 15 feet of vertical clearance, which is certainly an improvement on what's out there today. You can see the distance from that facial wall, kind of the side off to towards the abutment, varying from 17 to a maximum of 27 feet. So that area kind of grows and shrinks a little bit, but creates some buffer zones so that you're not right up against a vertical surface on the east side there. And then on the west, you can see the NOAA fencing being mounted to the top of the curb, adjacent to the raised sidewalk for pedestrians that are moving through the space. And then a second view, again, just a little bit further south of that, but again, showing just the overall relationship portion where the trail gets actually a little bit closer to the abutment there. One of the design refinements or kind of optimizations here has been actually grading out that slope. So that area that you see indicated as a 2-to-1 slope with kind of loose set boulders there, originally was actually a retaining wall. So that was going to be an 8 to 10 foot drop right there from the edge of the shared use path, that sidewalk, down into the area used by NOAA as a parking area. And so that NOAA fencing all along was from the base concept design was set on that curb. And I know some of the feedback and discussion that we've had in the past with the commission is focused on what can we do about that? What can we do to kind of shift that fence out a little bit more, maybe open up that space? And, on the one hand, I hope that, the graphics presented here and these sections that are, a little bit more detailed and have the actual dimensions help to illustrate really what that space is like. But in addition, we did look closely and have many discussions about, what we could do, how we could shift that fencing off the curb, try to open that up a little bit more. And really that began to introduce a number of different challenges in terms of the constructability, especially given that slope material and some of the ground conditions that we're working with, and the feedback and input we're getting from our geotech partners on the project, as well as the fact that this area, you know, is creating a zone kind of directly west of that path opens up an area for additional maintenance needs and kind of an under, you know, in general, an underutilized space, and you know, an area that really isn't intended to have, it's not going to be a highly policed area, right? Because it is tucked underneath the bridge in a way, limited kind of eyes on the street as you're going through this space. So introducing an area where somebody could be potentially hiding out next to the trail, or that needs, you know, a good high level of maintenance to keep it cleaned up, introduces some challenges just for the long-term longevity of the project as well. So kind of a culmination of factors that lead to the plan is to keep that fencing there, similar to the base concept design at that curve in lieu of shifting it down the slope.
Is this a trail and then a sidewalk that's slightly elevated and then the fence?
That's correct. Yeah, so there's
So
about,
bikers not immediately next to fence.
correct, you've got 6 feet. You're 6 feet away from the fence.
That might meet our ask.
Yes.
Thank you.
And the fence is 6 feet.
Correct. It's 6 feet tall. Yes. That was actually that brings up another one of the challenges, that as you situate that further down the slope, you know, either you keep it at the same level as the trail and you create a level zone next to the sidewalk, and you've steepened up the slope going down, or that fence shifts further down the slope where perhaps it's a little easier to try and get on top of or jump onto from that trail edge. So there's definitely a security element as well, given that it is a federal facility and we're trying to make sure that we've got proper fencing that encloses that area that's used for parking. Yeah. Shifting a little bit further south, so we're under the off-ramp bridge that'll lead to Montlake Boulevard here, and a similar treatment here, much smaller space, so that users are going to be passing through it a lot more quickly. Because it's a more narrow space, there will be more ambient light that fills that space, so less of an emphasis on incorporating that those same reflective panels or overhead lighting in this space, but carrying through a similar rockscape type of treatment. This is also a spot where the trail actually splits into two, right? So the Bill Dawson Trail on the west side continues to the south, tying into that existing Bill Dawson Trail and the Montlake Playfield, and then that upper level is really where the SR 520 trail continues. It goes onto a bridge structure that leads up to Portage Bay Bridge. Couple views here, or at eye level. So on top, you're looking again towards the north through that space. We're basically standing on that bridge structure, looking back here, and then on the lower view, looking, you can see that bridge structure here curving off to the west, to the right side of the screen. A couple of sections again highlighting the space here. So on the far west, the far left here, we've stepped down from that NOAA fencing because we're no longer adjacent to the NOAA parking area. But given that we do have that slope condition adjacent that we're tying into, there will be a continuation of the typical pedestrian railing alongside the trail there. And then on the upper path there, again, you see our kind of 10-foot vertical clearance zone illustrated here as well. Transitioning to what we affectionately call the Wabin railing, which is from the West Approach Bridge North, design language that carries through alongside the SR 520 trail. Since we are transitioning onto, officially that trail and then another bridge structure, that railing type starts to come into play here.
Where do you lose the NOAA fence and where does this one start and what is that?
That is
Intersection.
an excellent question. There will be a graphic in a moment that'll better illustrate where those come together. This elevation is kind of a combined section and elevation here. So this is really, if you look at the key map here, up here, this is taken right at the edge of the off-ramp structure, the south edge. So this is at the minimal clearance zone that we have here. So we still have our 10 feet of clearance. It's about 12 feet in this location. But we're coming up, we're almost on that bridge structure that leads up to the Bill Dawson Trail Connector Bridge. And here too, because we're just outside of the bridge structure, excuse me, on the west side, that slope that ties down into the existing shoreline edge, start to introduce wetland and wetland buffer zone restoration. So that zone will be planted just beyond that pedestrian railing there alongside the Bill Dawson Trail, the lower trail there. In terms of, I guess there may be a tree or two in the way here, but really that transition from the NOAA fencing down to that 54-inch tall railing is happening right immediately south of the main bridge. And so yeah, as soon as we can, that starts to open up. NOAA has access to use the area directly underneath the bridge, so that fence line is really just right there in line with the edge of the bridge structure. And one thing I'll also highlight here, you can see how this 2-to-1 slope coming down, from the edge of the trail there, tying into the existing condition. It is originally that was just a sheer wall right there. So we're actually able to bring planting up against the trail edge there, which is certainly an improvement and kind of immediately visible and a part of the path experience. For the areas that are underneath the bridge itself, something we're still working on refining, but trying to pick up on the same rockscape design language that we have on the other side of the trails in front of those abutment walls, and carrying that through. These are spaces that are not going to get as much light, and even more importantly, aren't going to be getting any natural rainfall. So viability of plants in those spaces is next to nil. So carrying through that rockscape theme for the underbridge zones. And this is another view kind of looking back through this space. So this is pretty much that section that we were looking at a moment ago. That's where we're pretty much standing at that interface, the bridge structure. You can see the shadow line. You can see the rockscape treatment directly into the abutment area. There will be habitat logs as well as boulders set in that space. You can see the Wavin railing type here, so a little bit different from the pedestrian railing, but carrying through to kind of the terminus of this portion of the trail as an extension of that bridge railing type. Also touch briefly here on kind of the interstitial space in between the bridges. So this area kind of solidly within the highway zone itself. This is the on-ramp from Montlake Boulevard to 520 eastbound. And a couple aerial views here. That pathway that goes up to the Bill Dawson Trail Connector Bridge, you can see here in the foreground. There we go. The key thing here is that we have a pretty sizable landscape berm that's helping to separate the loop ramp here from that pedestrian bicyclist experience further to the west here. There will be an extension of the NOAA fencing set back from the trail, spanning between the two abutment walls, helping to secure the highway zone. One of the things that has also inspired over the progression of the design is that there's a couple of drainage facilities, stormwater facilities that are a part of the design at this loop ramp. They've been relocated to this area where there's a pull through, and there will be a slight retaining wall here, less than 4 feet tall, but also helps to build up that berm so that we're creating more separation from the pedestrian experience down below from that on-ramp. Also helps with headlight screening for vehicles on the ramp, so that they're not shining into oncoming traffic on the main line. In terms of the planting design, one of the things that's underpinning the kind of design choices here is looking closely at shade analysis throughout this area. So we're being very mindful of where we're up against tall walls, creating really shady zones. You can see the areas directly under the bridge are quite shady indeed. And where there's some more open spaces, for instance, over at that Montlake connection area, that switchback trail, being more open where there will be some lawn spaces. And then so kind of we're continuing to work with landscape architects, with WashDOT, with Seattle Parks and Rec, as well as Seattle DOT for identifying and kind of being on the same page with what the plant material will be, being mindful of maintenance considerations from each of the agencies, as well as these microclimate conditions that are going to be created by the project. So you'll see a series of these kind of diagrams as we go through the presentation. It's one of the main things underpinning that planting design approach. In terms of the approach, really, it's a matter of kind of layering the plant material. So where we are against or near pedestrian zones, looking at lower plant material, being able to introduce seasonal color, seasonal accents. So it's a little bit more interesting. And then as we step back, starting to layer in more foundational plants, lower shrubs, and then ultimately taller shrubs when we get out to some of the edges of the project. So very much an outward progression of height and density and layering for some of that plant material.
Yeah, so on the Montlake side, as you can see, it's a much smaller sign family. We're using the Seamless Seattle program and including the maps that will go into the bus signage, and then bike signage and the tunnel ID for the Montlake Tunnel, because that has not, been identified yet, will be included in the Montlake side of the project. That's okay. This is the overall plan of bike trail, primary, secondary trails, as well as locations of where particular site types are going to go. And we'll go into depth on that a little bit in a minute, of where each particular site type is going to be located. You'll go to So we'll start with the Seamless Seattle area sign, and this is going to go in 2 locations in this particular plan. So we're using that program to put those in place here. And then we're also locating the nudge signs in several areas as well. Pedestrian oriented signage on the periphery. And then when we get into the trails and stuff, it'll be more bike oriented signage. So get rid of that. And then there's a tactile portion that goes on both the area sign and the nudge sign. So that we're starting to get those laid out and what those are going to start to say. And then we've taken vignettes from the model to indicate where signs are going to be going, what they're going to be looking like in that space. We've also identified where there's existing bike signage from the Montlake project. It's already out there, so it's a little bit of an overlap for the scope of work that we have to where they're kind of meeting up. So we know where those continuations are happening from one project to the next. Again, the Montlake tunnel identification, and then the transit area map that will go into the transit center there. Montlake.
All right. And so kind of picking up from that, the Montlake connection area, we were looking at the underbridge zones, that split where the Bill Dawson Trail happens and then or continues to the south, and then the elevated path that is really the SR 520 trail that leads up to Portage Bay Bridge South. Last time we were here, we talked in more detail about the Bill Dawson Connector Bridge. This is that sinuous serpentine bridge that will lead up. You can see the connection in the distance there, directly attaching to Portage Bay Bridge South and being that cyclist connection. And then for users continuing our journey, all of us today, continuing our journey westward, ultimately that shared use path that continues along the entirety of of the SR 520 bridge, Portage Bay Bridge. And that leads us over to the west side here, another bridge structure that we'll start looking at in just a second, and the overall portal experience to the lid that you see here in the background. Do we want to stop?
Do we want to
and
take,
discuss each
yeah, I was
area?
gonna say, do we want to take questions on that part now?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'd say feel free to chime in. I saw you raise your finger halfway through it.
And just to note, Ben, yes, joined us right at the beginning of the,
Oh, great.
hi, Ben.
Hi, everyone. I'm Ben Giss, the architect commissioner, or one of the architect commissioners. No questions right now.
In that section, the Bill Dawson Trail generally, and you showed us several, obviously, sections of it. What is how much does the width vary throughout this, the width of the trail? Because there's some places where there's like Brian pointed out, there's a sidewalk and then the trail. Other places where it's just a mixed use trail.
Yes.
Just curious about the overall.
So it's generally, its effective width is generally 14 feet wide.
Yeah, right.
So that's the standard SUP width. I'll jump back here for, this might actually be the best plan view to look at for a second. We're kind of starting from the Montlake connection area there's a slightly raised sidewalk alongside the 14-foot wide path through the tunnel. So that continues all the way through the underbridge area until basically just beyond where the NOAA fencing ends. And that's really where the two trails are going to split in that space between the two bridges. We'll go back to this section.
It's effectively 21 feet from the east side of Montlake Boulevard all the way to the Bill Dawson Trail.
And so this is where we start, the two paths are starting to split apart. Right. So for the portion of the Bill Dawson Trail that's being improved for this project, it's going to be a 12-foot wide asphalt trail with a 1 foot wide concrete kind of containment band on either side. So it'll continue with, or for most of that, sorry, actually, alongside the pedestrian railing here, there'll be a 1 foot wide band, and then we have a 2-foot gravel shoulder on the side of that 12-foot wide segment.
There will be places like here though where pedestrians and bikes are mixing together in the same space.
Yes.
So will you have signage just encouraging cyclists to like go down a little bit or separating bike and ped movement or like whatever?
So
just curious what the strategy is there.
When we get a little bit further down in the presentation, we do have a really helpful slide that helps to show the just some of the tight confluences, right? And I will say that signage for kind of slow down, that type of thing is not currently in the works, but striping and kind of trying to define some of those routes is something that we are currently working on. Will certainly be something.
I mean, it's not unusual to have, spaces where you'd like to have 14 feet everywhere. So I've just seen different strategies employed in different systems about how do you just everybody's getting along well.
Right. And one of the other primary things that we're carrying that was done in the Montlake phase that we're also carrying through is this mixing zone banding. So we'll have these dark charcoal bands of concrete as part of the trail. Yeah. These graduated bands that kind of step down, so that those are also framing in all of these confluence points. Yeah. So there are some visual indicators just embedded in the design that you should probably slow down and things are about to happen.
And that, I mean, and we talked last time a little bit about sight lines, and this is where sight lines become really important. So,
yes.
Cyclists are racing along at 25 miles an hour. Comes to a bad point where there's a bunch of pedestrians they can't see. So,
Related question, could you go back a couple of slides to where you're showing the ramp and the section?
Yes.
The ramp.
This guy?
One of these? Before that.
This one?
A couple before you get to the, actually the underbridge.
Where it comes down from Montlake? The concept plan that you had
Also,
of the canal area.
that's- yeah.
Yes.
Oh, sorry.
So this ramp, is this pedestrian and bike combined
This
as
is
well?
I would say it's primarily a pedestrian. It's not a ramp. Like in the true sense, it's a sloped walkway, so there are no landings. It's less than 5%. This is not a primary cyclist route. It's meant to be more of an accessible pedestrian route instead of the stairs. The anticipation is that most cyclists will be coming through the Montlake Tunnel as opposed to arriving from Montlake Boulevard above. There's some other connection opportunities a little bit further east as part of the Montlake.
And there will be signage that would indicate that.
Yes.
Got it.
Yes. Fran's gonna be buttoning all that.
We're trying.
I mean, for me, this is one of the examples where primary flow is very clear and secondary flow is almost like a T-junction stop sign type thing where people are adding to the main flow when appropriate, right? The one under the bridge is something that we've never really seen clearly. Could you show when these things split and which is the primary and which is the?
Yes. It's a little bit further down the way. So can we circle back to that one? We've actually got a good graphic. Yeah.
Yeah.
We have a good graphic that'll highlight what's happening there. I think that will be the most useful thing.
At the one under the bridge and the one out on the bridge.
Yes. And the other two tight spots as well.
And then I guess I have a question. So we have a NOAA fence. We have this fence.
Which is all, this is the NOAA fence. It may be existing, but.
So there's a NOAA fence, right? There's a little fence that is on the retaining wall.
The railing.
It's called.
Let's call it a railing.
Yes.
Okay. And then under the bridge, we have NOAA and we have a different railing.
There are two pedestrian railings that come into play under the bridges. Yes. So along,
Are they the same type?
no. There is one type of fencing in play. There
NOAA.
are two types of railings. So there will be the kind of the Montlake, Portage Bay, Roanoke pedestrian railing bridge, pedestrian railing, and then the Wobbin railing, which is the primary railing type on Portage Bay Bridge itself. That continues through along, I jump through.
So the difference is 1-inch tubes on the bridge railing that are horizontal. On the parks railing, it's cables.
And this render seems very light and airy. That's the cable.
This is the Wobbin railing type is what's on Portage Bay Bridge and the Bill Dawson connector bridge. It is a little bit subtle when you're zoomed out this far.
Sure.
The railing that's
Yeah.
down along the path will be that kind of combined Montlake and Roanoke. Yeah, with cables instead of bars.
But the stanchions are the same.
The stanchions are a little bit different. But there is some similarity in the design language as far as some of the angles.
Are the lower ones existing?
No, those will be new. Yeah,
They just match the other Montlake
yes,
things.
yes.
And the railings on top of the retaining wall where you're doing the
That will be,
nearly 180.
the same as what's along the Bill Dawson Trail here.
Along the lower.
With the cables, yes.
Dawson. So that is more continuous. That will switch from that railing
They,
to the NOAA
So-
fencing, but then you will still
Well-
have the same railing again.
no, they will not touch each other. So
These two touch each other at the NOAA right angle.
The NOAA and the pedestrian,
The NOAA and the cables touch.
And the
Yes.
wobbin is
but not the
it's
wobbin.
In between, and the wobbin is like structure related, and the cable is ground related.
yeah, where the two trails divide, where they come together, that's where the Wobbin will start and go up. That's,
On both sides of that as it goes up.
yeah.
really, well, it starts out just being on a single side, but then it will be, once you have a fall on both sides, it'll be there, yes.
There is a view of that corner of the trail.
It does, it does relate a little bit to operations and maintenance, who owns the asset. We're trying to keep the same styles that were established for Montlake all the way through this. The shared use path, which is maintained and operated by WashDOT. We're trying to use that same bridge railing that starts out at the floating bridge all the way through up to Del Mar Drive.
So this is actually probably the best graphic here of kind of where those three elements are coming together. Yeah, you can see the NOAA fencing here under the cursor, that pedestrian railing, the cable railing that we saw that is an extension of the Montlake project. It was on that switchback path. It's gonna be part of that lower experience, adjacent to that shared use path there. And then as the pathway up to basically the SR 520 trail, as it's climbing up towards the Bill Dawson Trailbridge connector, it's pulled back a little bit from the confluence right here. And then once we start approaching where there's actually a fall off that edge, that railing comes into play.
And that one's the Wobbin.
That's the
which
Wobbin,
is
yes.
the two. Okay.
Yes.
Okay, and then going up this hill, this is great. This is a great diagram, right? Going up the hill, then you get another NOAA fence.
Yes.
And then at this pull through thing, imagine there's another fence.
No fence there.
No pedestrian access.
No pedestrian, but there's big cars and there has to be some sort of cars do not.
Well, there's a pull through that comes off of the on-ramp itself, right? I'm sure you've seen that kind of scenario any number of places along highways. So there is really no pedestrian access of any kind.
No, I'm not talking pedestrian anything. I'm talking an actual fence or a barrier or some sort of wall thing.
There is a low, call it 3.5. I think it's gonna be about 3.5 feet wall along the backside or the backside of this pull through. And then we're berming up from there. So it's under the thresholds for like a worker fall protection fencing of any kind. So there won't be any fencing on top of that wall.
But we'll see that from this side or you see
will.
it from the other side.
You'll see it only from the other side. You will not see, if we look at this side, so the berm will be coming up and over. This berm is cresting about close to 3 feet above that wall. So from the actual pedestrian and cyclist experience down along Bill Dawson Trail, you will not see any of this.
And there's barrier, you can see the roadway barrier, I mean, up on the car experience. And yeah, that's barrier, right?
Yep.
And
And then wall.
Isn't there a barrier that goes around the corner too, right?
No, not, that's what I'm saying. It's not. At least not at this point. Right?
This seems very confusing.
So,
It's not showing the edge of the roadway as well in its rendering. Right?
it's not.
That's what's confusing, I think, is it doesn't show it as like what the roadway looks like.
Right.
And is it just striped? So people just don't.
Yeah, it's the one, see it out there today, but of course, this is the add-on part is for the stormwater treatment. It's hard, I thought you guys showing exactly what the roadway, but it's the striped roadway that's out there today, basically.
Yeah.
The ramp, it's the on-ramp to eastbound.
So the on-ramp will largely be what it is today. There will be barrier added along the outside of the loop. And then that barrier it's interrupted where we have this pull through there. It's not clearly illustrated here, but there will be a low berm also separating the kind of the main on-ramp from the pull through. This kind of darker gray zone is actually, that will be a landscaped berm.
So the berm is the protection for traffic on that outside of that curve. Is that
I wouldn't say protection,
Then there
but-
was that.
still?
but
I think you guys can solve this.
Yeah. I think that this rendering doesn't show the roadway design around that corner.
correct.
Is what you're getting at, because I have the same question, like, is there a guardrail there, is a barrier, but I know you guys are designing, not you, but the roadway part of your
Yeah.
team is designing that, so.
Yeah.
And
It's a good observation.
we also want to make sure there are people from the public attending, so when we're done with this phase of questions, make sure that anyone who's attending one.
Yeah, I think we should continue on. I do think the multiple railing types is something we might want to touch on just as an overall. Does anybody else have any questions in this area?
I have one very quick, well, two questions. One is what is reinforced turf?
Oh, well, it's in the wrong spot. One thing. So this hammerhead type shape is actually where that label is supposed to be. So apologies for the confusion there. So there is a room for a maintenance vehicle if needed to come through here. And before these two trails split apart and become too narrow or going onto a structure, there's a zone where they can pull off and do the turning movement they need to get back out for Mont Lake's section.
Okay, so those are, it's turf?
It's concrete block with grass growing amongst it, so it can take the vehicle load, turning on top of it.
Okay. Cool. Could you go to the rendering of the underpass?
Yes, this one or the other.
The underbridge with the mirrors.
Reflective panels.
Yeah. Could you, is there a motivation behind the irregular sizing of the reflective panels?
There is, it's a matter of kind of modulating those panels so they're not one single size. There's a little more dynamism to them. They also, I'll go back actually a couple slides here. One of the key things, there's three modules in play. Where they're positioned in between the girders, they're taller so they can extend up into that girder space and kind of, I guess, really that will draw your attention rather than having an open space between the girder bay that's filled in with that bird netting. So it's more trying to be more visual interest and to take advantage of the space that's available in between those girder bays and have more surface area that can help reflect light.
Could the smaller panels extend down further to be flush?
In theory, they could, but one of the motivations behind their placement and situating them a little bit higher up is to reduce the potential for vandalism.
I see there's like a human silhouette that's still, I mean, what I'm asking is, okay, in that rendering, we see a very, very small person.
Yes.
On the top elevation. The panel just to the left of that figure is low. So could those smaller panels that the person is standing below just meet that same bottom line of the other?
They could. One of the things that's a little bit deceptive about the graphic up top is that it presents a flat ground line there, right? So it almost reinforces kind of the discrepancy there, but in reality, we'll be sloping through this zone. So if we were to create one element of this is if we were to create a consistent datum to the bottom of this, it might look a little funny, given that the ground line is going to be doing something different, a little bit forced. And I think having the panels kind of modulate a little bit and be offset kind of breaks that up a little bit.
Okay. And then what's the finish?
It's a 2B finish, so it's more of a mill finish, nothing approaching like a mirror type finish. So it'll be a little bit duller, but it will still be able to capture and reflect, color.
Okay. And then one other question that you brought it up already with the fencing. Well, no, I was just wondering about the fencing transition where they meet, but maybe we'll get to that later.
Yeah, we're working on that one.
Okay.
It is a funky condition for sure. And that's one of the, the details that we're going to get into and solve and make sure it's as elegant a solution as it can be.
Do we want a public comment on this section? Is that?
I think just making sure that people, how about we do this? So I know that there are people who are attending online.
Yep.
If at some point you want to make a comment, just raise your hand and we will monitor and make sure that there's time available. That might just be Mr. Simpkins, but we'll monitor for it.
I just asked real quick too, there is an FL, slot.
There is, yes.
Yeah, so that would
Coming up.
still come, nothing.
I say barring that, let's move on.
Great. So continuing our journey westward, crossing Portage Bay, as we get to the far west side of Portage Bay and the Portage Bay Bridge, we will arrive at the Delmar SUP connector. We have been affectionately calling it the corkscrew, and you'll see why in a moment. One of the challenges throughout the project is the amount of grade change that's happening. So this structure in particular is helping us get from the level of Portage Bay Bridge up to Delmar Drive. And so it winds back on itself. There's also some significant facial constraints in terms of available right-of-way and adjacent properties. So we are pretty much maximizing the work area that we have available to construct this. And on the left side, so we see the baseline RFP concept. I'll highlight quickly a few of the key design refinements that we've worked through, and then we'll see in a little more detail how that plays out in some of the 3D views. So couple of the more subtle things that have happened here. So we've got the mixing zone paving between two different levels that line up. In the initial concept, there was two portions of this, including at the upper level, basically the sidewalk along Delmar Drive, that were to be asphalt paving. You can see that indicated in the kind of the darker gray tone here. One of the things that our team is doing is that we will actually have that all cast in place concrete paving, so that there will be a consistent material to that, and not introducing an asphalt pathway up at the street level either. I think one of the most significant things we've done here is shifting the seat wall back ever so slightly, a couple of feet, and you'll see how that plays out in a moment. And then also a refinement to the portal and abutment walls for this structure. So you can get a sense on the left side, there's a little bit of a kink between those two. And what we've done is actually make sure that those are, we've kind of swung the portal wall out ever so slightly so that those tie in together at the same plane. And we'll see that in a little more detail in a second. I think this section is really helpful to just see and kind of imagine everything that's coming together here. So in the distance here, this is the tie-in at the lower level to Portage Bay Bridge. And then you start to ramp, I shouldn't say ramp, it's a sloped walkway, it's all under 5%. You start to come up, the corkscrew, you arrive at this level here, at the bottom of the Bagley stairs. So there's an opportunity there's a bike runnel associated with these stairs. There's an opportunity to shoot right up to the level of Delmar, or continuing out of the screen towards us here, sloping upward to what we call the Delmar switchback, which we'll also see in a moment here. An aerial view of this area. Again, you can see that right of way, those constraints dashed in red, and that faded out zone being beyond the project limits. A little hard to tell here, but the portal wall, that just a single plane laying out. And then another view looking back at it, looking generally northwest. So this one is where you can see that Montlake ledge pattern for the roadside walls and part of the portal experience, extending through for the portion of the wall that relates the most to the roadside, that single plane. And then as we get to the pedestrian experience, that transitions into the adds pattern, that more kind of delicate, fine pattern that's more scaled towards the pedestrian experience for this area. And for a moment, I know, so I'll kind of stop at this graphic for a moment. One of the things that we've discussed in our subcommittee workshops has been the shape and appearance of some of the columns, and particularly the columns that are not directly on top of the walkway. So where we are supporting that bridge structure over the shared use path, of course, those columns need to be set out far enough so that they are on either side of the path. And there was discussion about the opportunity for some of these columns that are out over the hillside to maybe do something a little bit different, have a different appearance. And with that, I'll turn it over to Bradley Touchstone, bridge architect on our team, who will take us through some of the design challenges and a discussion on that topic.
Thanks, Brendan. Yeah, just a quick follow-up to some of the discussions that we've had previously about the piers that are supporting this ramp. Specifically, if you go to the next slide, the two piers on the rightmost side, which are referred to as piers 4 and 5, that don't actually straddle the ramp below. There was talk of possibly, can we switch that to a single column configuration? Might we be able to tuck the columns together a little bit more closely so they're underneath the wings of the superstructure? And so we've gone back and taken a really close look at all of these things as we get into a more detailed analysis of the bridge. And so go ahead to the next one. The first thing we looked at it is, can we actually replace those two column, we call them straddle bents, 2-column piers with a single column pier. And what we've determined right now, because this is an incredibly tight turn that upper deck is making, that superstructure is actually behaving like a slab or a tabletop. And you can imagine it's very evenly supported by that transverse beam of that straddle bent pier. And if we switch to a single column, because of that tight radius, now all of a sudden we're introducing a whole lot of rotational force into that superstructure. And so it no longer wants to behave like a tabletop. Instead, it wants to behave like a beam. And that would mean that we would have to significantly increase the depth of that superstructure. We would also have to start introducing some post-tensioning tendons. And because of that radius and the congestion of those tendons, it really just became a non-starter. What we determined is that we really need to keep that twin column configuration so that superstructure can continue to behave in the manner that it is. So we then looked at, can we go to the next slide? Can we maybe move the columns in a little bit more closely? This was a pretty quick exercise with the structural team. If we reduce the separation between those columns, then we start, right now we're really required to have at least 4 diameters of separation between the shafts for the foundations. If we reduce the spacing between those 2 columns, it actually trickles down into the foundations and has some pretty significant structural implications. And so again, what we found was that the baseline concept was spot on in terms of how it was configured. And then finally, we've been looking at the configuration of the columns, and I'll point out there was a discrepancy between Appendix L1, which is the aesthetic requirements. You'll see on that far right-hand side, the column and the beam that spans between the two is flush. So it has that flush face. Whereas in the Appendix M1, which is the reference structural engineering drawings, there was actually a little bit of a step. And we've determined that step is actually quite necessary. And the reason for that is because of the seismic design, we've got to push the plastic hinge for the structure down into the column, which means that beam has got to be quite a bit stiffer and stronger than what those columns are. And in order to achieve that, the horizontal rebar that goes through that column cap has got to be fully developed before it gets into the zone of that vertical shaft, that vertical column. And so it really does require that we have that about 1 foot extension on the outside of that column beam. We've looked at, can this be a pinned connection? That was what we found, was that actually created a lot more trouble. So we've determined that in fact the baseline concept was one that was, again, very valid and is what we're going to pursue. We talked briefly during a task force meeting the other day about the possibility of creating some maybe artificial thickness to that column, basically an architectural pour that would extend the width and create that flush connection. We're still looking into that. We're concerned about 2 things. One, visually, does that create more visual mass than we want to have? And then secondly, are we doing something that creates a bit more stiffness in that column leg than we need to have for the seismic design? So we're still exploring those a little bit, but that's just a quick update on kind of where we are on the evolution of the design of those columns.
You know, that was something that came up in, you know, a couple of our meetings here, so this might be a valid time to. there's questions for this topic.
I feel like this is my opportunity to speak on behalf of the engineering commissioner role.
It took a while to get to this point, so.
Yeah, no, I'm used to commenting on architecture. It's kind of disappointing that we are saying that the structural engineering is governing this. And I would say that there's a lot of ways to solve this and a lot of ways to do it such that you don't need things like this. So not too supportive of your rationale there, guys, but I don't know how hard I want to push on this, right? There's a number of ways that you can do this if we wanted to. I'm looking to the rest of the commissioners as to whether we actually want to push on this, because there are technical solutions that are readily available to do this in a single call.
What would some of those solutions be, Brian?
I mean, if you think about this thing is a hoop supported at intervals, right? If you make the hoop a little bit stronger, it doesn't rely on the torsion stability from these vents. You could get that out of the system itself. You could put there's so many different choices here, guys. I mean, even if you found out where the centroid of rotation was, you could have a slightly off-center column that balances that torque with gravity itself, and it could counteract its own twisting by offsetting the single column. So there's a lot of solutions here if we want to do it, and they're like, as far as like the rule of thumb for spacing for 4, yes, but spacing of 3 is a 5% reduction in foundation. Spacing of 2 is like 15-20% reduction in capacity. Yes, it is a reduction of capacity, but like your utilization curve on a pedestrian walkway, but these aren't heavy loads. This isn't a big bridge. I would agree with you if this was the foundation under the main bridge span with cars and heavy roadway. But a technical obstacle to a pedestrian bridge that's spanning 25, 30
I know that
not. Go ahead, Brett.
Yeah, I know that the landslide walls coming into play on those foundations seems to be also a complicating factor.
Yeah, I would say that is probably more than anything to do with up, right? So you have to solve that below grade, essentially.
Can we look at slide 54, or at least it's 54 in the draft that we received, just so we can talk about from where you will be viewing this? It's
That's what I'm asking.
This one or the one on the bridge?
that
This one, sorry. This
So
one?
This is the one that I was looking at, but if you also have better ones from when you're approaching it from below, you could look at that as well. This one,
No,
I'm
I think
thinking
we're a little
about
too far
that.
away.
looking at it from that path down below that runs off of the page on the bottom right. And then also when you're kind of at that mid-level, I just want to just look at it together, because right now we're looking at it from the view that tells us it's a problem, but this is the view from which.
Yeah, this is the helicopter, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's my argument, like, I would tend to think this is not a huge issue. I feel like this is the only view we've seen it
Yeah.
from, and this is when the comment was generated.
Because otherwise you're seeing it from the lower path, but you are passing under a straddle bend on the path itself. And so the ones off to your left, the closest one to you, you will see, but will it?
But it's also the precedent, because you would expect and anticipate to see that. I just don't.
I think if the choice is that we're not actually gonna see it and all those things, and you choose not to upgrade it, that's fine, but I don't wanna preclude this on a technical merit, like. No.
Right, I think that edge you see on the right could be quite nice if you're coming from the path from below, but I don't know that it's worth the change just for that view below. You see what I mean? On the curve to the right of the screen, if you were coming at it from below, that could be a nice moment where you're seeing the underside, but is it worth making the change for that
Really.
very
No.
specific view?
I think that would be a helpful study
It would be.
to help answer the question, what is 30 feet below look like? What's that view corridor like? And there might not be one because there might not be physical access from that point.
Exactly. I think it's
Maybe
really
that's a study.
minimal.
I think we
Sure.
talked about that
Interaction
in
with this.
task force, and there are enough trees there.
Yeah,
It's kind of like when the
Yeah.
trees are small, you might be able to see it for a while, but once the trees have grown up, you're not gonna be able to see it.
If there's a context, a land use context below that could help answer the question offline,
Sure.
that might be helpful. Because what's going on down there and the surrounding uses that would either have visual impact, or there isn't a visual impact because the uses in the area just simply don't.
Yeah, and actually, as we go on, we'll have a few kind of more overall
Okay.
views of that area. There is really, short of the SUP itself alongside on the bridge, there is really no other pedestrian public viewpoint of this area. You've got Seattle Prep property just about all the way down to Boyer.
They're going down.
Way
Are
down.
there light poles or anything out here that are,
No, there are no poles. There will be lighting integrated with the.
and rail lit?
Yes. And they're integrated with the Wabin railing that comes off of the bridge and wraps around this.
So this is not the cable rail, this is the,
Correct.
okay. Next question. I've always, that stairway that goes from street to top of one spiral, but not all the way down,
Yes.
what are we getting out of that?
What are we getting out of this particular stair?
Yeah,
It's a shortcut more than anything else.
but then you still have to go around the full spiral.
If,
You're gonna go on the trail.
yes. Yes.
So it gets you halfway into the
So-
problem.
It keeps.
Yeah, it keeps you from having to go,
Switch back.
yeah, that long movement down and around.
The desire path. Yeah.
That's about a block of length that you
Yeah.
travel off.
But we're not doing it down again and getting onto the 520.
Correct.
Is the seawall portion that's closest to the right, if we're going to the right? Sorry, I can't help myself. Is that really big enough to accommodate use? I mean, because as it flares to the stair, someone could actually sit there and have
Yes.
a comfortable place. As you're approaching the wall, is that even a comfortable place to sit?
It's, I mean, you are coming up against a wall for sure, but that seat wall is set back about 2 feet.
Enough to.
Yeah, so there's enough to sit there and have your toes out of the way of cyclists
Without
coming.
conflict with the
Yes,
traffic.
exactly. And that was one of the two things driving how we pulled that back.
Yeah.
The second one being the bike rental. So the original alignment, there was the potential for, as you're trying to shoot down, your pedals are going to clip that every time. So we pulled that portion back just behind where it intersects with the bike runnel, so there's no pedal collision opportunity right there. That was a fantastic segue. Thank you.
I didn't plan that. I just saw it and I was like, wait a minute.
Well, I'll jump. I know,
Any other questions? Yeah.
yeah, is there anything else on the columns or we'll have a kind of stopping point for this section anyhow. Maybe we'll keep going here for a moment. I know there was a question about, just kind of better understanding some of the relationship of the different wall finishes. So we wanted to highlight that here. Talked a little bit earlier on about how we would continue the plane of the portal wall through with the abutment for this particular bridge structure, so that everything decidedly facing the roadway, and part of that roadway portal experience is that consistent Montlake ledge finish. And then as you turn this corner, one of the things we'll be developing the transition piece for that, but going into an FF3 wall, that adds pattern that's typical for all our kind of more pedestrian experiences. That pattern as well for some of the walls that are actually supporting the lower portion of the trail will also carry through this space. So there's a relationship to that experience over on the Montlake side with all of those walls that are facing pedestrian experience, as well as through this space at the Del Mar R subconnector, and then again into the rest of the lid as well. So that's kind of keyed in on the right side there, the blue highlighting the areas that are going to have that adds pattern finish, and the orange being that portal wall, roadside wall type experience.
And purple is
the seawall. So that's
adds or not adds?
That is tall enough that it will have the lower portion will have the adds pattern.
So that'll just be blue,
That is effectively,
but not a tall blue.
yes.
Good.
We talked a little bit about the stair already, the shortcut that'll get you up to the Bagley viewpoint, which we'll circle back to in a few moments. You may start to notice that there are, again, 2 railings in play. We are making that transition from the bridge itself, that Wavin railing type with the bars up above, the Seattle side, the streetscape side, going back to that cable railing type.
Where does the top of that wall is cable?
Yes, up here, up
And
above.
everything on the spiral is
The
above it.
Yes. And you'll see the transition. It's actually, in some ways, I hesitate to say transition, but where those two are closest to meeting, you'll see in just a moment as well.
At the top of that,
The switchback to the south. Yes,
one side will be one, the other side will be the other.
correct. Briefly mention, some of the planting through here, because the slope is sloping down at a good clip through this space, all the way down to Boyer. One of the things that I'm actually quite excited about for this area is that as people go around the loop climb here, you're actually going to have an experience of being right there at tree canopy level, which is always kind of a neat experience in general, to actually be right there next to the tree canopy. And especially having quaking aspens in there, just the movement of those leaves, especially as they turn colors in the fall, will be a really special moment and exciting. We'll also have bitter cherry, vine maples, spruces for an evergreen foundational component, as well as dogwoods that will lend some spring color or blooming as well to help animate that space.
You do solar studies on that?
We do have a solar study on that, yes. Well, a couple more slides. As far as the trailhead, so this is what I was alluding to with the transition between the 2 railing types. One of the things that we had discussed in our recent workshop was what this terminus would look like at the trailhead. And, what you see in the baseline concept, kind of this sharp angle that ties back to the city sidewalk there. And the question had come up of, is that the right thing to do? Is that what we want in that space? Because it is a very tight, kind of confined, the intended bike movement is a 180-degree hairpin through here, right? It's really 60-degree turn, right? And so the question was pretty much asked of, well, we have all these other curvilinear elements. Why aren't we carrying that through as part of the transition and how this ends? And so we took a look at that, and that works. It actually works a lot better, I think, in a lot of ways. It's a subtle change. In some ways, it's still following the same general spatial parameters. It hasn't gotten significantly wider. We're not necessarily creating a ton more space, but just by virtue of having that arc in the foreground there, that transition, it just feels more open, and it also feels more inviting for people who are on this northward route. If they are going to make a subtle bend to go down the ramp, it just kind of invites you in and down along rather than having kind of a point right there. So in terms of, the true geometry, if we all went out there and measured it, the change may not be terribly significant, but at least just the perception, the user experience going through here, this is absolutely an improvement and helps it feel a little bit more open. And this is that area I was alluding to where those two different railing types do come into play. They don't touch. These two railings never touch as a transition, but they do effectively demarcate the zone. That's kind of the extension of the WashDOT portion of the trail, the bridge structure, right? Kind of terminating at this point. Truly the structure terminated a little bit further back, but we do have the significant retaining wall that's coming along here. And then transitioning into another significant retaining wall, but one that's on the back side of effectively the city sidewalk there. That is the full 14-foot width of a typical SUP as you're heading north from this point.
Does the sidewalk end here?
No,
While we're viewing it?
no, it continues on behind us, but it does get more narrow. So I think it's their typical 6-foot width going behind us
And
here.
there's
The
a bike
railing
lane.
stop?
The railing stops, right, as you see it here, yes. And exactly where it could be pulled back a little bit potentially. But it's helping to reinforce what that movement would be.
And why is the railing not needed anymore?
Just not very project. Well, continuing south, why is it not needed? Because we don't have the grade change issue anymore. So by the time we're at this point where that slope is at the same level as the sidewalk. So we don't have a hazard.
What is the grade change along that fence line between the two rail segments? It doesn't look like a lot. It looks like a foot or two to start.
Well, I mean, to start, it's their level, it's
Right,
it's
yeah.
sloping down at 5%. I mean, by the time you're getting back to the Bagley Stair, which I don't remember off the top of my head, but we've got probably about 10, and 8, 28, probably about 14 feet.
The trail markings that show the slowing down, if you will.
Yes.
Do they have to be the same material, treatment, color? Or is there value in making them, having the same pattern, but making them appear different? There's two different resources.
I think, I would think you would want them to be consistent because it becomes a design language that as people are moving through the trail, you recognize. So if you start introducing other materiality or colors or textures, even, you start that design language that you're trying to, get people to recognize starts to get more convoluted and different. So we do want to try and keep that design language consistent.
If you need to, I mean, you have differences in the fencing about those typologies. So you do make variation in design
Sure.
details based upon different ownership.
Effectively, yes.
Yes, so that's part of why I'm asking the question is that there's a larger issue at play, which is wayfinding.
Yeah.
You want to standardize those treatments.
Precisely, yes.
And also WashDOT or SDOT has determined that they would like the 520 trail to continue. This will not be the trailhead anymore. The trailhead will be on the far side at Roanoke and Boylston across I-5. That's where they want the trailhead to officially start.
Oh, okay.
For
That's
their
helpful.
portion of this project, they've determined that they want this trail to continue.
This goes through.
This goes to the open
the lake.
space.
And they
across.
want that language. to
Yeah.
Yes.
Continue. Okay, that's helpful.
So there's a cable rail on the top of your retaining wall.
Yes.
heading north, when is the next cable railing?
There is a short segment. I'm not sure how much we will highlight that here. There is a short segment near the top of the Roanoke stairs on the far side of the lid, but you'll be going at least a couple hundred feet before you see another cable rail.
Is this not a, I mean, you could almost justify that this is your, because it's associated with your retaining wall, it is that handrail type?
You could. One of the nuances to this is that the woven railing type at its top has an inset kind of grasping rail at the top. You can kind of see that playing out, right? And so that's actually encroaching about 9 inches into the pathway. So the true width of that pathway is the 14 feet plus the 9 plus the 9 where it's occurring. And so right now, if we, short of realigning walls and profiles and a great deal of change, if we were to introduce that same railing type, exactly the same, it would reduce the 14-foot clear width of effectively the SUP heading northward, or it would reduce our planter strip even further. So we're actually quite literally, we are playing with inches to get all this stuff to fit just right through this space. It's very tight, and all of these things are intricately positioned to work with one another.
Yeah, you have 2 handrails that are different languages right next to each
One thing, maybe this question for you, so like Matt was saying, so we have a maintenance agreement with the city. There's a lot of, Matt was speaking to it earlier. I believe this wall is city maintenance responsibility, and that's partly,
Yes.
I guess I should ask this question. That's partly too why the railing on top of that wall is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I understand your ownership strategy, right?
Yeah, this is where it mixes too, so
Mixing is the tough one.
yeah.
Is the ownership strategy a pretty clean line currently? Is it fully?
Yes.
Okay.
And it was done and agreed to with much effort.
Yeah. For sure.
So that it could drive the contract requirements, basically, because there's the acceptance at the, so it was very clear.
And is there a slide where we have the specs for 2 or photographs of the actual design of the 2 railings?
No, we don't have a good picture of that today.
I think particularly the intersection that you want to see how they're coming together, maybe in a clear light. Not that, it's not that it's okay.
Yeah.
Do they have the same angle of the stanchion and stuff?
Is there a rendering of it?
No. So
The wagon railing has a vertical stanchion on the path side, and
And
it
then it
cants
goes
back.
out, it's not that it's wedged, whereas the other one is
just a straight vertical.
there's
There's
no,
a
it's angled the whole time.
yeah, that's what I'm saying, it's angled.
Like
And then it's actually slightly wider at the base than
It is, right, so it's not parallel, neither are parallel.
correct.
The thing is, the Wabbit one is much more burly, like if you see that on the pedestrian scale everywhere, it's too much.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because it's solid 2
Yeah.
cable as well.
It's kind of true, so, yeah.
Be nice if they were more
It's
cousins.
Well, that's what I'm trying to understand. It's
Could be the
actually
same thing.
being the
That's like I'm thinking.
Photographs.
Extension.
understand how much they do good. Materially, are they treated the same?
Yes, they are both galvanized steel. The cables, of course, being stainless, but the stanchions, the top rails, and yeah, so it's at least the similar materiality.
So not same and same.
Those not.
Great.
All right. So I think this is actually the slide that you were looking for, Brian. So this is the kind of, these are the 4 locations where things get weird, basically. So these are the kind of 4 main confluences or where there's some tight movements. And this is really showing what those all are. So on the far left here, we see the Delmar RSUP connector itself. So the corkscrew, what those minimum radii are, the 14-foot width path, the 27 being the minimum radius. And again, excuse me, based on the spatial constraints, it's really just, we've pushed that radius as far out as we can to get as much of a straight segment in all cases. But we are, again, this is another area we are literally playing with, with inches or up to a foot to try and make this thing work and have enough room for it to also get built. You can also see the Delmar RSUP trailhead there, and those distances and the clearance, that tight movement for sure, that you're doing that hairpin. If you're on a bike, you're certainly going to need to slow down through that space to navigate that turn. We do also have the dimensions there of that tie-in at the between the Portage Bay Bridge South and the Bill Dawson RSUP connector, that interface. A little bit more generous as you're kind of either coming from the west or headed to the west. A much tighter turn if you're trying to come from the east or head to the east, given that the primary movements are expected to come from down below, up that connector bridge and to the west, or vice versa, and less traffic going directly on alongside Portage Bay Bridge South to Montlake Boulevard. And then lastly, that interface where the Bill Dawson connector bridge, that RSUP, and the Bill Dawson Trail itself are all converging there. So another funky spot for sure. And then that's where the sidewalk ends. So it'll be a curb ramp that brings you down to just the general RSUP level. And then you've got that confluence of all 3 in a fairly tight spot.
Is there any consideration or need in having a vertical element where you've got these weird intersections that you're making a choice and sometimes at less than optimal speed? Was there a thinking about having a vertical component? It's like, oh, there's something coming, I need to do something different. Is there any value in that or need?
We do have signage.
There's a sign.
There are signs for, in the 3 spots to the right for sure.
Okay.
To indicate where the trail is, which direction they're going, and which trail is going which direction. The best that we can do in the situation it's in. So those 3 spots definitely have signs on them,
Okay.
bike signage. But we don't necessarily have it on the corkscrew itself. We do have
Sure.
one up by the
Doesn't need
seat wall, but other than that,
Okay.
And, we're still developing it, but, certainly these areas, will benefit from some degree of striping to help reinforce, which side of the path you really should stay on. I think without striping, somebody taking some of these tighter turns will take advantage of all the space they can. But if there's somebody else trying to do the same thing, going the other way, that could be a problem. So reinforcing, hey, try to stay on, the one side or the other, particularly for the corkscrew, as well as the connector interface, I think are the 2 that will really benefit the most from some striping that'll help to define that. And that's something that's currently, the team is currently developing.
And the thinking there would be it's in the middle, so mixed
Yeah.
pedestrian and bike,
Correct.
just separating by direction.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. So it'll be a center line stripe, primarily solid braking where, for instance, at the base of the Bagley stairs, it may break to help indicate that, there are other things happening. There are things coming together here. Similarly at the Bill Dawson connector bridge interface, straight lines, but it will start to dash as you approach that interface as well. So all things that are currently in the works.
I think we've said this a couple times. I think it would be, it's probably at this point mostly in terms of marking and not just striping, but actually creating sort of triangle zones where you're not supposed to ride, right? So that you can turn something, an intersection like the third one, the second from the right, third from the left, you turn that into a T intersection somehow. Because what you don't want is two sort of people at speeds trying to merge together. And I think your flow is very clearly weighted to the swoop, to the straight.
Yeah.
So if that had the rumble strips to the right straight thing and there was a marking such that it came in at a 90-degree rather than a, I don't know. I think there's a way to do it. The Bill Dawson connector interface one, that seems like there isn't a priority. And the sidewalk kind of confuses it for sure.
It does, and it's a tight space where there's a lot coming together, and a lot of that's getting driven by grading constraints, vertical clearances.
Yeah, of course.
There's again another one of these spots where everything's coming together. I think if anything, it's probably the more direct route is going to be up.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the movement down to the existing Bill Dawson Trail and southward into Mont Lake will be more of the secondary there. So if anything, striping could help reinforce what that primary movement is. And if you're doing something different,
Yeah.
slow down.
I mean, if it was me, I think I would keep that 14 coming down, keep that necked tight and make it line up with the one on the right and make the one on the left more like a T intersection, right? Like you're almost widening into a little chaos. The sign is going to be really important. Work
That
hard
sign
on
right now is really complicated.
work hard on that sign. But if you can make T junctions, then people will know who has a right of way very clearly, like who needs to yield to who.
I mean, both the images on the right are,
Should be a
there's a merge happening.
Yeah.
If
Well, there's
people are
also-
smart and responsible, it's fine. I hate to say it's the guy in the big road bike, feet clipped in, who's just churning and that. I mean,
Headphones on.
I run into that guy all the time, and that's gonna be the problem, right? And it's usually a guy, I hate to say it, but it's, so, but it's, yeah. That's the reality out there.
I think signage is important and throughness is important, and I think it's all. So I propose to move on.
Yes.
Well, jump it down. So kind of the next major area. So we're going down the hill now, looking at the Boyer Traverse. So this is Boyer today, that existing condition. The bridge columns are right there. They are a part of the sidewalk experience today. One of the things that will be changing is that those columns are going to be much further back. So this is going to be much more of a pedestrian focused zone as you go through here. A couple of those overall views. So I mentioned earlier when we were talking about the columns and so forth on the Del Mar RSF connector. One, you can see the grade change. There's about 70 feet of grade change down this slope. But also there's not much on this slope, right? This is going to be pretty densely forested. The existing area that's owned by Seattle Prep is well forested today. So views from Boyer up will be almost non-existent as far as being able to see those columns down at the street level on Boyer. In terms of the shade study, this is the view of the microclimates that are being created. It is accounting for excuse me, the tree canopy that's expected with the trees we are planting in the center of the corkscrew connector. I think the big story here is really just as we get underneath the bridge, you can see the cooler colors indicating the deeper shade. Of course, directly under the bridge, again, not getting any natural rainfall. Plants won't be able to grow and sustain through the winter. So there will be, in those zones, rockscape treatment. Again, we're being very mindful of these microclimates that are going to be created and looking for those opportunities to still include vegetation. And to that effect, carrying the tree palette on through this area, there's certainly an emphasis on some foundational evergreen trees, but also carrying through some of the other species that'll have some seasonal color, deciduous trees. The aspens, of course, we mentioned being a key component in the middle of the Delmar R subconnector. There will also be some restoration planting down along the water's edge. And you can also see in this view some of the similar rockscape kind of treatments for the underbridge zones, particularly around the columns and those areas where there's really not going to be enough light or, more importantly, water that can fall to sustain those plants. A couple quick views of that space. So there is an outlook along Boyer. It's subtle. It's so subtle it's probably difficult to register and looking at the view, but those two seat walls are shifted ever so slightly because as the columns got shifted for a little bit further to the east than initially anticipated, trying to reorient that view a little bit, but keeping the overall geometry of these outlooks consistent with the precedent from the prior Montlake phase and the other outlooks that we have throughout the project. And then another view back the other way, looking out towards Portage Bay.
In the previous rendering, are the column uplit?
They are, yes, thank you, actually. So the what you see in the kind of the background there is Pier 2. Pier 3, you can actually see one of those columns just at the edge of the view here. Those two piers will have 3 uplights on the sides, like the 2 sides and then the side facing Boyer. So there will be a light down at the base that'll help light up that column in the evenings. So they are uplit.
And is that just for public safety or what's the role of that?
It's more, it's not necessarily a safety thing so much as just accentuating the columns and kind of the experience more than anything else.
It dates back to our previous consultation with the design commission and trying to form a gateway along Boyer. As we continue,
So we talked at subcommittee a little bit about planting and making sure that your views are maintained.
yes,
Is that?
that dog was gonna move.
I mean, if you're making a place to take in views, then.
Agreed, yes. No, we definitely want to focus that view and part of what that tree, the actual placement, of course, continuing to be in refinement, but trying to also push that view a little bit off from dead center on that column and try to prioritize the view shed of the actual water, right? And kind of down along the columns, but not necessarily at the columns. So we are trying to still prioritize that view, and part of what the tree planting can do is help us frame that a little bit better.
Do you have a general sense of the pedestrian movement on this area daily, like what the numbers are?
I do not.
I mean, I've been down there. It's pretty consistent.
Yeah. Washoe
Throughout
does
the
have
day.
some pedestrian counts for this general area.
Consistently busy, you're seeing, or?
I would say so. I mean, it's a pretty major flat thoroughfare through there for pedestrians. There's a sidewalk. Yeah, and
That's
bikes.
it, yeah.
And is this the latest and greatest orientation of the seating? I know you were.
Yes, it's like I said, it's pretty subtle when you actually see it, but there is a slight rotation to the seawall relative to Boyer Avenue itself, and the trapezoidal shape of the outlook that's mirroring or parallel to Boyer. So there is a slight shift to those. That is also, if you're sitting on there, you're going to be slightly offset, but again, focusing on that view out to the water with the bridge columns kind of off to the side, framing that rather than that being the focal point.
Was that the limit of with from them? Because it seems like they're still facing toward the columns, more so than the water, but was that in terms of clearances to get around them? Was that your limit?
There's a little bit of that. There's also not pulling them, we don't want them to extend beyond the outlook space itself. And we're also not looking to increase the overall area of the outlook. So to create a larger space for folks to occupy, it is supposed to be a little bit more of an intimate and focused space.
So it is the limit of the space in front of it, for moving around it.
There might be a little room to orient it a little bit further. So yeah, something we can certainly look at.
I think where we got in the subcommittee, and this may or may not have come through the AV system, was this is not a backed seating situation, and you could just sort of rotate and look at whatever you wanted to rotate to.
Right, I think Molly's point though is, especially from this view, it looks like you're dead looking at the columns that Brendan just said, you're trying to mitigate the view away from the trees, right? So it just, yeah, it's a people are gonna sit, many are probably gonna sit facing walkway. Yeah.
Right.
Next major area here, kind of a part of this Boyer Traverse a little bit to the north here, slightly around the corner, just the Roanoke Stairs. We talked about this before. A couple of the design refinements here being we straighten out the stairs. I know there's been some discussion about the cyclist use here. Really, the cyclist movement is up through the neighborhood along 11th, which is the street on the upper side here. And then down to Boyer. This is not the most bike-friendly opportunity to traverse. We have about 100 feet of grade change, or excuse me, 50 feet of grade change, so over 100 steps. So just to quickly look at what that section looks like, it's substantial. So trying to push a bike up or hold on to a bike and keep it from getting away from you as you're going down. This is not a preferred spot for cyclist movements. We did, of course, straighten the stair a little bit, something we talked about in the recent workshop. If there is an opportunity to have kink or break that up a little bit, but it really comes down to some of the spatial constraints that we're working with in that area. And not the least of which are the undergrounding of multiple utilities through that space, driving some significant offsets that we need to be mindful of as well. And of course, one of the locations where we've got the nudge signs, at a kind of a more pedestrian focused zone. There is that short stair. So this is kind of probably the best view. This is you were asking earlier about where there's another one of these cable railings relative to the one we were looking at by the Del Mar switchback. This is basically the next location where you would see that. So it's on the far side of the lid. There is a low wall that is helping to deal with some of the grade change that's necessary. And due to the fact that there's greater than a 4-foot drop, it does have a 42-inch railing on top of that wall segment.
Is there a fence along the portal opening there?
There is signage, roadway signage that's mounted to the portal at that location. And we'll talk a little bit more about portals in a moment. But that fencing is there primarily to defend against public art on the signs.
That short wall on the right side of that right rendering, that's gonna be signage, that's why it's there.
No.
No,
the
sorry.
roadway signs.
Roadway signage for the highway that hangs onto the lid.
What is that short wall then?
Sorry, which, well.
Yeah, so that rendering on the right side. Right in front of that person sitting.
This one here,
The
or
one in front of him.
this one? Oh, I'm sorry. Not colored. That's a set of trash and refuse receptacles. So that'll be trash recycling compost right there.
Oh.
It's one of its locations. Stretch my leg now. Roanoke stairs. Okay, and then we'll kind of jump into next section here on kind of streetscapes and portals here. Keep going. Yes, okay. So just real quick, kind of an overall view of all the things on the west side. So we're actually looking a little bit southwest here. 520, the Portage Bay Bridge itself ending right about here, transitioning to the on-grade roadway. We were just talking about the Del Mar R subconnector, the Roanoke stairs in the foreground here coming up. Then we've got the overall, the lid, the Roanoke open space, 10th Avenue. We also have the tunnel that we'll talk about in a little bit as well that continues out to the Harbor Trail, the Harbor Trailhead. And also in a few moments, we'll touch briefly on the Fire Life Safety Building as well, which is located right here at the corner of 10th Avenue in East Roanoke. So we're going to start actually out at the Harbor Trailhead and work our way inward. So this is kind of this is really the terminus point where future connections will lead commuters and cyclists all the way to downtown. So definitely an important piece of this. So Trailhead will have that same mixing zone paving. There is an existing oak that we're working very hard to protect. It's one of the trees that was actually planted as part of the original roadside plantings when this highway went in. So we're working hard to keep that one. Want to acknowledge that. One of the other big refinements here, you can see the amount of kind of light colored green is very different between these two views. Initially, the concept was that the outside edge on the north of the Harbor Trail would be a retaining wall, and so there would be a railing within one of the cable railings right there on the edge of the 14-foot wide SUP. As the design developed, there was kind of an opportunity for a multitude of reasons, but that wall shifted outward about 20 feet or so, and gives a little bit more room for there to be plants along that edge, so you don't have such an exposed edge. It's sloping downward, and we no longer need to have a railing along this entire segment of the shared use path. This portion of the trail leads up to this is 10th Avenue right here off to the edge. So it leads to the Olympic ramp and ultimately the Olympic outlook. So there's a ramp, switchback ramp that'll lead people up to 10th Avenue, as well as the tunnel that will continue under 10th Avenue and bring you to the Roanoke open space. So we've got a view of that trailhead pulled from that study model. So you can see the openness towards the north side there. We do have lighting, we have signage, there will be bollards here, another set of trash receptacles off to the side. And you can see that wall 2W, it in and of itself is functioning as the guardrail, so it is sticking up to 42 inches, but it is set lower from the trail as well. Continuing on a little bit further, the Olympic ramp and got the tunnel there. One of the key things, of course, we do want to pack in as many trees as we can throughout the project, but given that we do have the outlook here that's meant to frame a view towards the Olympic Mountains off in the distance, we are working with the planting layout and plant selection to make sure that directly in front of that we've got smaller, shorter stature trees that won't grow to a point where they're going to ultimately block that view or become a maintenance hassle. One of the things to note too, as we go through a lot of these views, particularly from our study model, we're pulling in, the lighting. So this will be highlighting, that transitional light fixture that I mentioned at the very beginning, not the marina fixture that was used throughout the Monolith project, but now that we're on the other side of the bay, switching to a light fixture that we have, believe it or not, far fewer of them here And then along 10th Avenue, also note, we'll have these, the larger poles that are actually supporting the overhead catenary system for the King County Metro buses. So we're being mindful of those and their placement, working closely with the team and ultimately with SCL, and King County Metro, excuse me, on where those can go. And then throughout the rest of the project, just to quickly speak to the railings, we do have multiple railing types, but these are all of the same design language here. We won't have that cable railing versus the bar railing coming into play in any of the rest of the areas we'll go through today.
This is all cable
Yes. All cable.
and all the same, not all the same.
Well, there's some variations here.
Some has the bar in and some doesn't.
Some of it will have a handrail integrated into the overall guardrail. And then where, like, for instance, at the ramps, right, where it's acting as both the guardrail and the handrail, those two elements are combined. Other locations, it'll just be a standalone handrail. That handrail itself is a stainless steel handrail. So that's a common design element. So there is a galvanized and stainless steel combination there, but that is also carried through what was established through the Montlake phase. I mentioned a little bit about the planting and how we're being very mindful of placement of the plants, specifically trees. Certainly trying to help kind of buffer the highway from the shared use path, or really vice versa, so that experience of going along this trail, much less exposure to the highway. There will be some trees we can fit in, and then focusing primarily on vine maples as the tree of choice directly in front of that outlook, a lower, shorter stature tree. And again, continuing to work with WashDOT, SDOT, and SPR, landscape architects, as we refine the planting design throughout. At the outlook itself, we've talked a little bit about the changes and refinements here. Kind of reconfigured the outlook to speak more of that trapezoidal design language. Some of the other outlooks, it's inverted in this case, so it's actually framing the seat wall there as opposed to kind of projecting outward like many of them do. There is a wood lean rail as part of the outlook experience along this side here. Also framing in that outlook zone. And then just thinking a little bit about the movements of pedestrians and how we anticipate them moving through this space. There's an opportunity to reshape a little bit that planter, open it up a little bit. Every kind of square foot of exposed soil area we can provide is going to ultimately benefit the tree. So helping to open that up. This will be a specimen magnolia tree that goes in at this location. And then the balance of the tree soil volume will also be provided by soil cells below the pavement. It's more of a technical piece that we're not going to get into too much today, but believe me when I say we're getting into the weeds on really exactly how many of those we need, and again working closely with SDOT on where we can do those and maximize the soil volume that's available to all the trees that are near pavement or on structure. There we go. Another view here, just from a little bit further up. Again, the study models that we're working with, trying to combine all of the different elements. You can see again the KCMT pole for the OCS, as well as that wood lean rail I mentioned, the configuration of the seat wall, low landscape wall, helping frame things in, as well as some of the nudge signage at this location. Coming from that Harvard trailhead, moving along, heading eastbound, if one is not going to go up the ramp to get up to 10th Avenue, the opportunity is to continue on through the tunnel. So we do have, this is the Harvard Tunnel, similar design kind of configuration to the tunnel that's existing in Montlake. They'll have the 14-foot wide SUP, a rolled kind of mountable curb, and then 6-foot wide sidewalk, so that there is separation between pedestrian and cyclists through this tunnel. That separation also helps tie together an accessible route between, on either side. One thing here in this view that you'll start to see those shadow lines. There's a series of panels with inflection points that vary that help break up just the plane of the side of the tunnel.
What are the inflection points?
Sorry?
What are the inflections?
It's part of how the concrete itself we formed and poured. So it's just the concrete wall itself, but there's an inflection point for this upper portion, about I think they're 4.5, 6 feet tall. But that inflection point varies from one 4-foot wide panel to the next. And like I said, that it'll create those shadow lines. There'll be a little variation, a little bit of a lip from one to the next, and then you'll also have that depression. So it'll help to break up that face so that it doesn't have the same just cleanness as you're going through. And then the next view will be on the other side if you were heading westbound. So this is as if you've kind of completed that full loop around the Great Lawn Path. This is just past that decision point that you would make to continue on towards that trailhead, the Harbor Trailhead, and that experience, that view. A couple of these walls that are helping deal with the grade change within the lid, the open space area itself as well. And you can also see that adds pattern that you'll see throughout, very similar to what's out in Montlake. One thing not represented in a lot of these views, or really any of them at this time, is that these walls will be planted with vines. So there will be vines spaced in front of walls that are taller than 3 feet. So that in time will help lessen the massing of these walls.
Can I ask, was the pattern developed by Norris Soto?
It certainly was. Yes, that slide's coming up too. And that's also a major continuation from the Montlake phase. So one of the design elements that's tying two projects together. Jumping up to 10th Avenue here, couple of major design, really one kind of critical design evolution here from that baseline concept. On the east side of the street, so north is going this way. There was an opportunity here to have the bike lane separate from the roadway itself and come up to the sidewalk level. But in the initial design, that wasn't present on the west side of the street. But through some, definitely some consultation, community input, that was something that got incorporated into the project. So for the bike movements kind of coming from Roanoke itself and heading southbound along 10th, there is a bike lane that's up at the sidewalk level. So you'd have a 6-foot sidewalk plus the 6-foot bike lane and a raised tactile strip that separates the two for the majority of that. And then right about at the Harvard Tunnel itself that's passing underneath, that's where that bike lane would drop back onto the street level. And the graphic below also showing the current and in progress layout of the overhead catenary system. And so the poles supporting that, streetlight poles, as well as just poles without streetlights, are kind of one of the driving elements along the streetscape there. And so working with that for the tree spacing, so that there's a dialogue between the trees on either side of the street, and varying between some of one of the next slides we'll get at the species in particular.
Are any of those poles for the catenary system or in general going to be replaced, or are they existing?
They are all being replaced. So the existing 10th Avenue is being demolished. It's coming down altogether. And so there will be a new wider lid structure put in place of the existing 10th Avenue bridge. So all of those poles will be replaced. One of the also big differences between what's out there today and what will be out there is all of the lights, the street lights and the OCS poles will be combined. So right now you have two separate sets of poles, many poles, we'll be condensing that, so that we have as few poles as possible.
You show that pole going right flush into, do you protect that at all? Do you have to do a concrete base?
There will be a concrete base,
Okay.
there will be a foundation for each of those, yeah.
And in terms of interagency responsibilities here, so WashDOT is building this section of 10 that's part of the project. Does SDOT then maintain it or take it over time, or
The trolley poles,
just the whole street?
Whole section of it.
And
SDOT maintains. the
yeah,
street.
so it's still an SDOT asset that they would maintain.
Yeah, and then we worked the goal to combine the poles, so interagency agreements to have those, if they're used for multiple.
And then this Parks has a
Um,
goal.
Backside of the sidewalk is parks.
Yeah.
Yeah, so SDOT will be maintaining the planter strips, but then on the backside of the sidewalk, in either case, it'll transition to Parks and Rec. But everybody's got a little play here. And just a couple quick views of that again from the study model on the lower corner here. This is let's see, that is the west sidewalk looking north. So we're looking down 10th, and that's where the bike lane will jump up to the sidewalk level and continue on. On the east sidewalk, that would be, that full width is the combined sidewalk and bike lane as well. So again, kind of talked about this already, but the overall alignment of the trees, aligning them across the street so that there's a rhythm, there's a consistency there, as well as an interplay between some of the larger elms, which I think is the next slide. And then also wildfire black gum. So there'll be a combination of the elms with their kind of deep, rich canopy, and then also the black gums that'll have this wonderful foliage color to accentuate that as well. And then on the back side, so the trees we were just looking at being street trees maintained by SDOT, and then on the back side of the sidewalk here, a couple of lawn spaces, and then some additional trees out at the edge of the lid structure, a combination of catalpas with some more visual interest, one bur oak, kind of point loaded on Pier 3, one of the columns below, and then also some of the cedars and spruces that'll help add some evergreen foundational canopy on that edge. As long as we're looking at that corner of 10th and Roanoke, just want to quickly address the fire life safety building. So we did have, we heard a lot of feedback at our last SDC presentation and some great discussion in the last workshop that we had with you all as well. And just want to acknowledge, we've all heard that feedback. Primary feedback being improving the building relationships with the community and the adjacent fire station, improving upon the utilitarian appearance. The utility yard and reducing the visual impact of that was a key component of it, as well as incorporating more planting along the Roanoke frontage if feasible. So WashDOT and design build team are currently working on this. We're working on studying some design alternatives, and those will continue to engage with the design commission as well as the community through the Section 106 meetings going forward. So no updates today per se, beyond the fact that we've heard the feedback, we're working on it, and we're looking forward to being able to continue refining that. Anything you wanted to add, Todd?
Yeah, maybe just one level lower, but Brandon mentioned so what we've done is through a change order kind of allocated budget to, and we've already started initial kickoff to define where we could find flexibility, right? So I think it so that because there's the performance of the function of the interior of the building remains the same, and some of the maintenance vehicles remain the same. But basically, we will through that effort look at relaxing some of the prescriptive requirements that we have for the massing of the building and the layout, the materiality of it, help me out here, material, color, and then also looking at the planting, but planning kind of comes after that and what's available. So those are the areas we'll be looking at. We're not going to be looking at putting the building underground. That's not feasible because of the function of the interior. So that's kind of where we're headed. And then decisions will be made, be looking at cost impacts of all of that, of course, but through that process, kind of an iterative feedback loop through the 106. That's kind of a little more specifics of what we're doing.
Great.
And I'd say through the summer, over the next couple of months, is kind of the timeline we're looking at to conclude that, make decisions. That's always good to know.
Yes.
Time.
Yeah. Thanks, Todd. All right, so next topic here is portal walls and the portal experience here. So start looking at, so this is the west portal. So we're still kind of going around the edges of the lid and the open space. So from the west side, we see here is the composition of that portal. We have the roadside walls here that are tying into, on the north, existing vertical wall, and then on the south side, kind of continuing into that wall 2W. That was the wall that we were talking about a little bit earlier. That's just offset from the Harvard Trail, continuing on down to the south and following that I-5 northbound to SR 520 eastbound ramp that you see in the foreground. I think we'll go through the next couple of slides and we'll be able to touch on some of the design elements throughout here. The next slide here, looking at kind of more how the parapet or kind of the wall of the portal itself at the lid came together. And it was a delicate balance really between ensuring we've got the soil depths on the backside that are going to be supporting the plants and the trees in that zone that we were just talking about. And then also the important function of that wall, that barrier acting as the guardrail as well. There is a little bit of a kink here between the two sets of girders on either side of the bridge pier there. And so that there will be a very smooth transition at the top. That'll make that almost imperceptible. One of the things that we've developed as part of the bridge piers themselves, there is a pier cap above. We're extending kind of the volume, if you will, of that pier cap vertically as part of how closing off the end diaphragm of those girders, not introducing any extra geometry, working with the kind of the geometry that's necessary as part of the structure itself. Keeping that simple, subtle, it's not the place that we want to draw somebody's eye. We want to have that overall portal be the main element. So trying to limit the elements that might distract from that. On the next slide. So the next slide here, a couple of views, just highlighting what the view would look like at the ground level, the roadway level, I should say. One thing to note is that there's really two separate lid structures. There's one lid that's supporting 10th Avenue, and then there's another one for the Roanoke open space. And so there is a step down between the two. And that was a topic of great discussion at our last meetings. And we realized that there was, a little bit of extra geometry lurking in our model here. And really that entire portion that's exposed and visible is a girder. So there's an I-beam girder right there at that edge. Very little of that kind of stepped closure wall between the two structures is visible at all. So there's not a tremendous amount. The perception that maybe there was a canvas there to work with or something to do is, in fact, there's a girder there. The next slide is a couple more views of that. So the main view here on the left, if you're down at the roadway level along, heading on that I-5 northbound to SR 520 eastbound ramp, continuing through, you really just register, one set of tub girder on the outside in a row, and then it steps down to another set of girders through there. A couple more views of
Pause that for a second.
Yes.
The first one you hit is a tub girder.
Yes, the
And
outermost
then
on
the
either
step,
side
and then the step down
is
is another tub girder.
no, the step down is an IB.
Is there a way to make those the same?
I'm not the right person to ask that question, but I would venture that without a significant impact to structural design at this point, that the structure is approaching its final design. That would be a significant change to that structure's design. The initial design concept had only the outermost on either side of the overall structure and the portals set as tub girders, and everything in between was an IB girder.
I mean, we've been asking about this wall in particular, all of these meetings. And to just figure out what it is and now not be able to comment on it is kind of frustrating, but, okay. You were gonna do like a lighting, something, either light it or not light it at in our.
Yeah, we're continuing to work with the lighting team on that. There are lights set in every other girder bay throughout the structure. So that I don't believe there's any lighting directly in that girder bay between those two structures. So that would be offset. There wouldn't be a set of underbridge lighting that would be casting directly on that girder that's stepped down.
And this is the only I-beam that we're gonna see in the whole project.
Fully exposed.
Roanoke Bridge, each end of all the
Yes.
portals, all the other bridges have boxes that cap them.
Yes.
Let's keep going.
Can I ask one more clarifying question?
Please.
So the two lines of columns, so are vehicles splitting on either side of those columns?
Yes, the express lane goes through them so that there is a break. That's part of, that's the shift. Maybe you can kind of see it in this view as well. But it's a little difficult to see, but that's where the gates that swing out one direction or the other. So there would be cars that transit through that space between the two slightly offset piers.
Okay, and then the round columns, you talked at one point about
Yes.
whether that's rectangular or long.
Let's come back to that in another slide. Yeah.
Yes.
I know we're getting tight.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll go for it. Actually, what time is it? I don't know.
3:30.
3:30. Okay, I'll go a little faster here. Jumping over to the east portal for a second. So the east portal is a bit different in that there is a step back on one side. There's a bit of a jog. It was intentionally done. It helps to give a little bit more space back to the areas alongside Delmar, and particularly that Bagley overlook. So helping to kind of have enough landscape area so that you don't have the lid structure of the highway right up against that sidewalk of the street experience. And so as that comes together, we can go to the next slide here. Bagley viewpoint, just want to note, again, the soil volumes and how we're setting the top of that barrier, how that wraps around. It will slope upward a little slightly back to that step back portion, but being very mindful of the Bagley viewpoint, or outlook itself, for the views out and keeping that barrier low, but still balancing all the other constraints and needs. Next slide. This is talking a little bit more about the soil volumes, the relative height of those barriers increasing a little bit just by the function of how that steps back. I'll point out that the pier cap itself, similar to the other side, extending that volume up so that end diaphragm is not set in, making sure that we've got, again, limiting the number of changes or differences in the geometry there. It does come to a point And that's kind of reinforced also by the geometry of that pier cap at its outermost point. We do have a subtle radius as it comes back. And on the next slide here,
That radius is the same as the other radiuses.
it's a tighter radius. It's about a 5-foot radius, so it's quite tight. It's quite subtle. It's not nearly as generous as the ones on the outer portal walls that come out from the roadway. So again, a view. So this also speaks a little bit to your question about the cars that'll kind of split between those two piers. The overall wall finishes that play out here, so that Montlake ledge coming to that point in the foreground. And I know one of the questions and things that we had discussed at the last workshop was the thought that in some ways this almost feels as though there are two separate portals. And the question came up about creating a pier wall, excuse me, for that portion that sticks out at that step back, as well as the discussion of potentially square columns. So the next slide here starts to talk a little bit about some of the background of how we got to the current design. And so on the right side there, we've got a couple of the graphics from the original design concept for the structure that included a series of jet fans as part of the ventilation approach for the fire and life safety aspects of the tunnel itself. Our design team had some pretty key design optimizations that were able to actually lower the main line of the roadway level by about 2 feet through the tunnel to improve ventilation and airflow. Part of that was moving away from what was originally intended to be a set of pier walls to a row of columns that also help to open up and allow for more airflow that passes through. Part of that was it came down to a set of round columns throughout, and eliminating the pier walls altogether in favor of those columns as part of this overall ventilation strategy. So we don't have any fans, and I think visually that's an improvement because these fans would have been situated very close to the outside edges. They would have been a part of the portal experience. So that's one key kind of improvement there. We did look at the idea of can we introduce a portion of pier wall there, and that introduces some complications in terms of the airflow and the airflow analyses that would have to be rerun as part of that. There's also some other competing challenges. Certainly, it comes down to kind of a multitude of things, but really construction sequencing and construction work areas, as well as schedule, start to come into play with the nature of the square versus the round columns in the ways that traffic shifts from one bridge to the next, as well as some other aspects of the project as well. So we are proceeding with the round columns as part of that design, again, stemming from ultimately the optimization of the airflow and ventilation approach for the lid itself. So I think the next slide is just again kind of a comparison of the two lid structures in their entirety. That composition, those portal walls, the end diaphragms, and the kind of trying to make that geometry as simple as possible. And that also gets to there's the question about the fence on top on the east side, that roadway signage that would otherwise be fairly accessible if somebody wanted to redecorate them.
Is that fence a cousin of the shorter cable fence?
Not at all. It is it's like a wire mesh fence. It's a thin, more security style fencing, not chain link by any means, but horizontal. Is there a better term for it?
It's an attempt to be more transparent. It's black in color.
More like netting,
It's
wire mesh netting.
no, it is anti-climb fence, so it's rigid enough and more vertical in orientation. It's not unlike what you would see at, we can send you a cut sheet.
Very narrow but long spaces
Yeah.
between the wire mesh.
Yeah, it's like a rectangular wire mesh.
Yeah.
I've seen it.
Before we progress on to the Roanoke section,
Yes.
we're showing it right here. Mr. Simpkins is still online. Just wanted to make sure that if you did have any comment, we did talk a little bit about the
Sure,
next
yes.
steps in section 106 review. Mr. Simpkins, is there anything that you wanted to add before we move on?
Let's see, can you hear me?
Uh-huh.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, that's great. Thanks for all this, and it's kind of fun to be the only person from the community on here today. I want to mention the oddest thing, which is I'm sort of a tree guy, and I sure wouldn't plant an elm in this day and age. We've had Dutch elm disease in Seattle since about 2001. And the city spends a ton of money inoculating the elms in Roanoke Park, for example, where there are about a dozen of them. And that the cultivar that you mentioned is resistant to Dutch elm disease, but it's not immune from it. So I just ask that you go back to the arborists and make sure that they really want to do this elm thing. I know that's an oddball comment to make, but it's important because these things, when they die, things get very ugly.
Yep. No, appreciate the comment, and certainly something we'll bring up in continuing our dialogue with the city landscape architects from both SDOT and SPR.
That's great. Thanks so much. And thanks for all this. This is really just a wonderful presentation and a wonderful meeting.
Thank you.
Okay, I'll get off now.
Okay.
Well, not that kind of getting off. I will just turn myself. Thank you.
I think I'd have a question just to the group. It's 3:30, and Michael, if we are coming back on the FLS, is it helpful to the design team to somewhat conclude the presentation now, have deliberation and a vote, and release a certain portion of it? Because I think if we continue into the lid itself, we're going to run well over time and potentially not even get to a vote.
Right.
And I think that is probably more, I would ask you, design team, what resolution you would like from this meeting today, given the fact that we have half an hour left.
Yeah. Since you are coming back for a fourth review, despite all my accolades, will that fourth review, were you thinking of it have the same rate? Because I think you're right. I mean, 3:30 means 4:20.
Yeah.
It's 3:30. And just be realistic with every time.
Yeah.
And I think the only thing left on our table is the open space itself.
Yeah, I think one critical part, I think, from subcommittee is wall 4W, the terrace walls, or not, and just having you see what the result of the consensus from the design team is. The reason I don't want to delay discussion on that is they are moving to their first design package. Walls will be advancing to a final design package before that last SDC meeting. So really, any flexibility for change is really now.
Do you have a deadline for the FLS building that you need our input for that?
We should be developing that in the next few weeks, I would say.
Because of the 106 review. That's another thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, we need to make, because this project moving along, we need to make decisions.
Can we at least touch on the turf,
On that one
plans
wall.
of wall facing Roanoke and maybe wrap there?
Yeah, I think, some of the things we've discussed and, aren't necessarily more updates than anything else. And so I think we could fly through a good portion of it and try to focus in on a couple of the areas. I think the updates for the federal outlook might be pertinent as well.
I think you're gonna run out of time and potentially not get to a vote is my problem, right? And I want to make sure that you do get something today.
I just want to disclose that there's
That
not
wall.
gonna be any change with wall 44W.
So maybe we can.
Show us that.
Let's go to that.
Because you had proposed a change and then you unproposed a change and then where are we now?
Sorry, I'm not as familiar with his.
Right.
You're getting close.
Very close. Okay, so wall 44W. So the initial concept was a single wall along the shared use path between the shared use path and Roanoke and Del Mar. And effectively the concept refinement is really not a change per se to the wall itself. So if we go to the next slide, kind of highlight that. So the initial baseline concept that you see here included a rock face wall here as that separation, a kind of a nod towards the Olmsted legacy and the kind of rock walls that you see throughout the city. And what happened over the course of the design is, and as we progress things, was that the shared use path elevation increased. So in this location, it was higher than initially anticipated. So as a result, we had a more significant grade change between the sidewalk and the shared use path. And so due to some other technical constraints and requirements related to the contract, use of a rock face wall was effectively precluded at this location, given that height differential there. And so looking at taking kind of a holistic view of all the things, the design as well as the constraints that we have within contract and the technical requirements that we are meeting. The design refinement here was really that it transitioned to it needed to transition to a wall that would have a guardrail given the height differences that are occurring here. And the distance, so, proximity here between the sidewalk and the SUP. The guardrails there providing bicycle safety with that adjacent change. And then we're, as a cast in place wall, using that same adds pattern that was originally developed by Norisado as part of the Montlake phase and carries through in a lot of locations around the lid as that wall finish. So if we jump to the next slide, skip one, but the slide before is highlighting the zones, the extent of where the guardrail would be required. Couple more zoomed in views here of the overall composition and what that wall will look like as it kind of emerges from the ground plane, addresses that separation between Roanoke and Del Mar right as they're transitioning and the shared use path above.
How tall is that railing? Sorry.
The railing itself is 54 inches tall because it's adjacent to a bike facility, a little taller than your standard railing.
Is this step governed by the location of the path above
When you say step,
the wall, retaining wall, the step in elevation, right? Like
Yeah.
if that path above was 20 feet further into the park, you could have a smooth sloping grass, whatever, and no retaining wall.
in theory, yes, but then we wouldn't have a shared use path that would, or an accessible route through the open space. We're literally using every linear foot we can get out of that oval path to make the slopes for that pathway work out.
You
And
need the length to make.
we need the length. So if we set that in and we reduce the length of that oval path, that has a ripple effect that goes all the way out. Like we're backing out from the elevations we're working with at the Harvard Trailhead, all the way back to the elevation at Portage Bay Bridge South. And quite literally, this is a Swiss watch getting all the grade points to tie in properly. So adjusting that pathway would have significant implications on that.
And the F and C dimensions on, I think, 2 slides ago. You go back, oh, sorry.
This one
The
or this
next
one?
So those F and C dimensions, what are those?
Testing, I don't have a photographic memory, but one of those, it's not a hard and fast dimension of what those are, but they're defined as a recoverable shoulder zone and then a vegetated zone, if I recall correctly.
I'm wondering if there's flexibility to move that, the wall that we see closer to the shared use path and have a 2-tiered wall system.
That was where we were.
Well, we
2
had-
meetings ago.
Yeah, it's like the
And so-
first subcommittee meeting, that's what we talked about. And that's what we've been looking at. I can't remember, I was trying to remember why the 2-tier was ruled out.
So why was the 2-tier wall system ruled out?
Again, like a lot of these things, there's a multitude of factors, including some commercial factors, as well as the maintenance agreements that were in place related to the walls. This was intended to be a singular wall, and that was in part what some of those maintenance agreements were predicated on. And then what we've heard is feedback as far as the city wanting to limit the number of walls that are required to be maintained in this space. So avoiding a second wall in that place is one of the factors.
I think we were gonna do a study that this is the max section, right?
Yes.
And at either end, you have a short enough wall that you probably don't need this.
Correct. Yeah, and the railing drops off as soon as it can.
Yeah, for me personally, out of all the things that we look at that were like, oh, the columns from below, this is the one that I think affects the pedestrian experience the
Yeah.
most. That is really unfortunate.
Yeah, I wrote like, yeah, items were jail fence, right? Like, this is what we had a issue with originally.
Yeah, I mean, it's a double whammy, right? Because you have a taller wall than you anticipate, and then thus it precipitates a very tall, exaggerated guardrail, 54 inches, right? It's very significant.
I mean, I want to play devil's advocate and say that it keeps soccer balls and things like that off the street, maybe, and there might be some real benefits, but certainly openness and welcomeness is not one of them.
It doesn't integrate that space into the feeling of the community.
Anyways, I just wanted to make sure that got shown. Because I think that is something that's
Yeah.
progressing.
Yeah.
Okay.
And you've warned us, it's just, this has been going back and forth for a while. It just, out of all the things it does have. And, the one thing about the order of the presentation that it does happen each time is that the lid is last.
Yeah.
And so you have to fly through it or
The FLS
not
was
do
last, yeah.
So it just.
We want to pause here for more comment, or do we want to try and touch on the federal outlook as well and the integration of the SP utilities there?
No, I think you're, yeah. I think if you would like release on some, then you need to release us. Okay. Do that. Deliberation, guys. I think we've done a nice job of asking questions and talking it through during. Do we have anything that is a sticking point, and what sort of are our top notes that we want to give?
I had one other really quick question that should have been a follow-up question before about those mirrors in the, earlier slides. Are there other contexts where you all have used this before? Is this a new, concept?
I wish Osama from LMN was here to speak exactly to kind of the premise of it, but we didn't want it to be exactly reflective so that everything's recognizable, so it wouldn't be jarring to folks. But as far as a one-to-one comparison of where this has been used, I can't point to that.
I was just curious if, because I know that there isn't a public art plan associated with this, and that seemed like one area where you could very easily, similar to Nori Sato's way of working with you all, could potentially introduce like a brush pattern into that mirror surface that would then introduce more visual activity and would actually be a pretty insignificant cost. You already have a really varied surface as you were referring to, and it sounds like there are some constraints there in terms of having it be more consistently sized, which would actually, I think, keep it nicer in some ways, just to keep it more smooth. So since you can't, one recommendation from an art perspective, I'd love you all to consider is could you actually incorporate some type of a design pattern? And if this were a successful model, could that then be implemented or iterated in other locations? And then one other thing from an art perspective, which is more a question for the Office of Arts and Culture, as I'm wondering with the 10th and Roanoke location, since there are so many interdepartmental collaborations happening there with SPR and SCL. I know before there have been other contexts with major pole replacement efforts that sometimes there's % for art funding generated associated with that. So I wonder if this location might be appropriate for that discussion. So I just wanted to raise that, and I'm wondering how that discussion could potentially be initiated, or if that's been something that's been brought up in your discussions interdepartmentally.
We did have a slide that addressed potential temporary or semi-permanent art installation opportunities on and around the lid. I could jump to if it's pertinent, but I don't want to derail the deliberations. Those are essentially, opportunities setting the stage for future curation of those kinds of things, but not a specific component of the project that we are going to implement.
Right.
But we are being mindful of trying to create the stage for some of those things to happen.
So related to some of the, okay. Related to some of the fence and railing conditions, I just wanted to note a perspective and open up to you all. So the Bill Dawson Underbridge fence adjacent to the NOAA parking lot, I appreciate that you did explore the idea of moving it downhill. I understand some of the limitations of that location, and also looking at some of the renderings that you added, some of the context beyond, I think is helping fence not feel as high beyond. Go ahead.
Except you did exactly the slide that fence down the hill at the Harvard overlook on slide 83, right? Like you did do that on the other side, but then we didn't do it on the.
Yeah. So I am very open to us discussing that location further, but I do want to say from my perspective, I think that wall 44W not having a barrier feels even more important to me than that NOAA fence feels to me. To just reiterate something Phoebe was saying about that separation from the neighborhood, if one of them felt more acceptable than the other, I would say the 44W is a bigger problem to me currently because it's in a location that we really want that connection to the neighborhood. And so if I had to choose between those and which one to really ask for further things on, like a 2-tiered wall that is not railing, I think 44W is already in mind, but I'm curious if you all agree with that. Or if we have to weigh them against each other.
We have to pick one?
No, you do not have to pick one.
No.
But I think it gets to my point. I feel like we spend just, because we're going through it, we spend a lot of time on each segment, and that's important and good. But at the same time, at the end, we're talking about the highest hitting priority people space. And that, we're not paying as much attention to it during the course of the presentation. So I think that's why Molly is positing it as such. Right?
Yeah.
Because we spent a lot of time talking on the other one, and then this one was kind of at the end. And thank you for pushing it forward to make sure we looked at it today. But
I think the size of this project has us creaking at our seams, right? Like this is a little bit beyond a normal meeting schedule. And I do want you guys to realize that like 99.9% of everything is coming by gold, and we're really excited about it. We are picking on a few things, but those things are the things that we think are important. And because it's such a big project, we probably get one or two things on each section. I don't exactly know how we want to talk about 44W, honestly.
Can I make a small comment about that underbridge?
Please.
You mentioned that transition, it's still under study, and I just wanted to kind of emphasize that this needs some attention.
Absolutely.
Going from the 6 feet to the railing and how that happens, and if it's actually going down underneath in that federal piece of land or not. I think that would be something to be aware of, that study actually happens.
Mhm. I think the end of that sidewalk didn't really make all that much sense either, but that whole intersection sort of needs a look. It's solved. It's that last percent.
For the action, what I suggest is any of these things that are the level of a recommendation, give them as a recommendation to move on and, explore. If there's something that you really feel like is kind of like a condition, which would be maybe that tiered wall, where you're like, if it's left like that, I'm gonna end up voting no. Then put that as a condition, but word it, I guess, in a way that.
Can you put a condition on a final vote?
Yeah.
If we're gonna see it again,
We're not seeing it.
I thought we were gonna see
Well,
Project.
and you can say that we want to visit, we want to visit that again.
We don't have to visit it specifically for the FLS building.
Well, we have to anyway.
I think it's on a different track now. Though,
Yeah,
because
because
we're-
the FLS
Yeah.
building is a neat
FLS
condition.
It's kind of
Is
separate
already
now.
a
Exactly.
separate project.
And we know
That's
there's
on the
work
future
happening. I
agenda.
think
And that's going to subcommittee. Not necessarily.
I think the wall is harder.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
it's a very clear feedback on the wall that it's not working for you, hearing it now. And just frankly, it's best to get it out now. And
Yeah.
not delay.
I agree.
If you can't get to yes without a condition, then condition it and then revisit.
Any other points? So a few of the hot topics that I had circled were the multiple railing types and how they all meet together. I think I also had circled, Kate, the under overpass art opportunity. I think I have the through path continues to be something that I'm focusing on to identify which is the majority path and the T intersections. 44W is on there.
And I think the thing we've talked about at the last two meetings is minimizing pedestrian and bike conflicts on the trail as much as possible, minimizing bike-to-bike conflicts
Correct.
on the trail as much as possible. And then one thing we didn't really get into a lot, because it's a lot of the detail, is making sure the connections from the neighborhood to the trail and vice versa from the trail to the neighborhoods are really clear, because that's complicated because there's a lot of access points, right? And so I think that could just be part of like a recommendation, right? That's just work that needs to be done. It's not a condition,
No,
but those are things that I think we should mention. That are important elements of the project. I think what we really need to decide today is what are we conditioning, what we condition.
Yeah.
What was the-
is anybody else as upset about the I-beam as I am? I'm willing to drop it if the team thinks, but that would have been in my list of conditions. It's the only exposed
What would your?
version of that. Just making box being like all the other end conditions. Like all of the beams that are visible are a certain type. And then we have this one that is different. And I would like it to be consistent with the end condition in every other instance.
Is that except for the Del Mar?
No.
Sorry.
Eastbound under
Yeah,
the,
going eastbound, west portal, going eastbound.
Yes.
Yeah. Under 10.
but I acknowledge that it's under a lid and it's sort of a non-prominent wall, but it is something that we've been talking about for all these meetings. Architects.
I think for me, it's a recommendation, but if for you, if for you, it needs to be a condition to get you to yes, then I'm with you on it.
Yeah. Okay. So, are we making 44W a condition? Yeah.
I think we should.
Yeah, that is the. Yeah. Anything else raised to that top? Okay, so recommendation on improving pedestrian flow, bike to pedestrian, pedestrian to bike, bike to bike.
Right.
Um,
And clear wayfinding signage.
yeah, with the signage package. Yeah, I agree. Like the multiple railing types and how they integrate. That's just further.
Really just about two railing types. The third one is the fence.
Well, I think there's another one at the top of the
Okay.
lid overlook, and that directly integrates with the cable version.
So there's a cable version on the
That's a
bottom,
handrail.
and then
It has one as well.
Yeah, that doesn't count.
Are you referring to the north corner of the
You
lid?
know, the big mesh wall, the big mesh fence, and then the regular handrail go together at some point. Transitions from handrail type to handrail type, or to
Guardrail type.
fence to fence. Yeah. Anything else?
This one's a small one, but at
Please.
the Boyer Traverse, just orienting as much to the south or toward vegetation and water as possible with the seed walls. So within the size of the existing bump out area without impeding on pedestrians. So as much as you can within that.
And exploring
I like that art.
possibility of a treatment to the metal surfacing, like a decorative, just variation and finish. Maintain the reflective qualities of it, but contribute to the varied experience in that area.
Okay. So, let's do that then, right? Thank you again for coming in and sharing with us this project. And I believe there's even a celebration following this to all the work that we've done together. I think we have the two conditions that we'd like to place on this. One being wall 44W being less of a barrier to the communities around it, and whether that be a two-tiered wall or an adjustment to the path to lessen the overall height, some sort of solution there to reduce the double barrier of wall and fence. I think that is an issue for us. And then thank you for the support on the I-beam, exposed I-beam at the edge underneath the lid itself. So those are the two conditions. And then the recommendations are to explore the art opportunities of the reflective panels and the underbridge opportunities. To continue looking at the 3 railing types, 4 railing types, and how they merge together, and to incorporate that with the signage and the path safety elements of pedestrian flow. And that's really where I think the recommendations are missing. I think that's what I had known. We are.
And adjust the Boyer traverse seawalls. Recommendation. right?
Yes, recommendation. And then I think we could vote. I do want to acknowledge that we are coming back on the FLS and the lid section specifically, so that's not included in this vote. But trying to get 44W within this vote. Clear?
One modification, I think we could change it to like decorative as compared to art. Innovation,
Please.
just for consideration for future iteration.
Okay. So around the horn. Anybody like to start?
I can't. For the portion we just agreed on, thank you so much for the great work, with the condition that we mentioned. Yes.
I'll echo you. It was a good meeting, so thank you, and agreed with the commission. Yes.
Yes.
I also greatly appreciate all of your adherence to the many, many years of work that have gone on with all of the folks here and past design commissioners, and appreciate your stamina in working through these presentations. Yeah.
Yeah, massive presentation. Thank you for all your hard work. Also too grateful for the recommendations and conditions.
I appreciate and am overwhelmed by the design of this presentation. Particularly as someone who doesn't really consider myself a designer. It's like, whoa, that's a lot of decisions we made here. But I think, like Brian said, 99% of this is going to be amazing. So I go.
Yeah, and I am very happy to make it unanimous yeses around the board. I don't think Ben is on anymore. I saw he dropped off, so he's a non-voting member at this call.
Oh, I'm still here, Brian.
Oh, I saw you leave earlier.
Yes.
Ben, would you like? Oh,
Thank you, though. Yeah, great presentation. Thank you.
Is that a yes?
And
Yes.
vote.
Yeah.
really appreciate it, guys. So thank you for all the work, and looking forward to more work.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
And really excited to see the construction underway. right? All the
Yeah.
temporary sidings.
It's able so we can get out there and build the real permanent stuff.
Yeah, exactly. It's amazing how much work you have to do just to get access to do the actual work.
Yeah, I've had to ask a lot of questions on that.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Only small impacts.
Yeah.
What's the potential timeline for this effort? Is that
Years?
even a-
Design years?
6 years to completion,
Okay.
but design, what, another half? Is it finished design up?
6 to 8 months.
I think like into the year, maybe almost 1 more year.
And then all the water.
Well, one thing I wanted to point out, I didn't do it earlier, but when we were talking about some of the structural design, I'm not sure everybody remembers or realizes we're building on past landslide, an ancient landslide between Boyer and Del Mar. That, you know, where that corkscrew is, that the soils are horrible. So it is quite an engineering challenge.
When was the landslide?
Well, it happened many times. In fact, there's a structure, it's called, we affectionately call it the WPA tunnel, SPU owns it. But WP was for a work project back in the 30s, where they actually, it's basically like a mine shaft, tunnel. They built it like that, you know, with a heading in them, but to drain the water because of that landslide. So it happened, don't quote me, but it's like in the 20s, 30s, and then in the 50s, and then also 10th Avenue on the south side, because the lid structures also affected those landslide prone soils. There was landslides when they built 520 on the south side of 10th. So it was a challenge.
Jim has his hand raised.
Go ahead, Sid.
Really, I just want to thank everybody. This is an amazing meeting, an amazing group to watch work together. And as a neighbor, I really look forward to this thing coming online. It's going to be fantastic. Well, if I'm still around, it's going to be fantastic. And I'm really glad you focused in on the two things that wall 44W is like. That says to us, don't cross the street, don't cross Roanoke Street, don't come in here. So, I really look forward to any kind of resolution you have. Thank you again.
Thank you for hanging in there.
Yeah, thanks, Jim.
No, my pleasure.
And Jim, we hope you're still around.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Only 6 years.
Yeah, please come to the FLS meetings as well.
Okay, thank you.
Really culminating with 22.
Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The exhibit at Sam.